Chapter 422. It was not late when Qin Wanru woke up the next day. The sky outside was still a little bright, but Qin Yuru's main room had been noisy. Many people came in and out, and the noise came out early. It was very noisy, so Qin Wanru had to get up early. Qin Wanru reached out to rub between her eyebrows and called in a low voice, "Yujie." But no one answered. She reached out to lift the gauze curtain and saw that there was no one in the room, which made her feel strange. When they were outside, Yujie was always afraid that something would happen to her, so she always stayed by her side. "Yujie," she called in a low voice. This time, no one answered. She lifted the curtain and got out of bed with her hair hanging down. When she was about to go to the window to see, the door was pushed open. Yujie came in with her toiletries and looked angry. Seeing that Qin Wanru had woken up, she hurriedly helped her to wash up. "Miss, I'm going to find hot water for you to wash up." First Mrs. Servant said that First Miss needs hot water. Today is a big event for First Miss, so they have to wait for First Miss first, Yujie said angrily. Qin Wanru sat in front of the dressing table and looked at Yujie calmly through the mirror. "They have already gotten up. They have gotten up for 2 hours. They are very busy. They said that they have to dress up well and that they will be the Miss of Duke Xing's mansion in the future." Yujie curled her lips and said disdainfully. Others didn't know the details of Qin Yuru, but how could they and their servants not know? She was obviously a fake, and she really regarded herself as a noble daughter. "What did Grandma say?" Qin Wanru smiled slightly and said calmly. Yesterday, after Qin Huayong left, she asked Yujie to send a message to Madame Dowager. Madame Dowager said that she will also come later. Yujie reported. This was the news she got this morning. Okay. Qin Wanru nodded. Now they would gather together, and she wanted to see how the show would go on. She cleaned up quickly. After slightly combing her hair, Yujie made a pair of double ring bun for her and put a pair of pink wreaths on it, which was simple and beautiful. The little servant girl brought the breakfast from the kitchen. Qin Wanru ate it calmly and heard someone in the yard saying that someone from old Madam's side had come. Standing in front of the window, she saw Nanny Yu, who followed old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion, into Qin Yuru's room. After a while, a servant girl came over and asked Qin Wanru to go over. Qin Wanru had already prepared everything. She followed the little servant girl and led Yujie to the upper room. In the room, Qin Yuru had dressed up properly and was sitting upright on the chair in the middle. Her head, which was crooked yesterday, was now straight. However, her face was too pale and she did not look well. However, she was in good spirits. Her gorgeous clothes made her look more delicate than a flower. There were a few hairpins in her hair that held her thick black hair in place. She exuded a noble aura amidst her gentleness. Qin Yuru's appearance could really intimidate people. Qin Wanru looked at Qin Yuru calmly and did not say much. Seeing that Qin Yuru stood up and walked out, she followed Qin Yuru and walked out slowly. Today, Qin Yuru was the protagonist. A group of people went out of the Chuehua gate and went to the flower hall outside. Old Madam sat in the middle of the flower hall with a radiant face. It could be seen that she was in a good mood. On her right side sat several elders, who were invited early in the morning. Behind them stood Madam of Duke Xing. On the other side sat old Madam of Duke Yong and old Madam Qin. Beside old Madam Qin was Qin Huayong. Not many people were invited, but each of them was a key person. Qin Yuru was overjoyed with just a glance. She finally got what she wanted. Glancing at Qin Wanru, Qin Yuru was about to step into the door excitedly. Once she took this step, she would definitely be rich and powerful in the future. Wait a minute. A familiar voice suddenly came to her ears. Qin Yuru looked sideways and was bumped into before she could see clearly who it was. The servant girls on both sides saw that it was bad and reached out to support her. "Sister Yuru, I'm really sorry. I didn't see clearly and accidentally bumped into you." Qi Rongji stood at the door with an apologetic look and a little flustered. It was obvious that she had bumped into Qin Yuru just now. Seeing Qi Rongji's expression, Qin Yuru was angry. She said that she didn't see clearly. Obviously, she did it on purpose. But now there were so many important people sitting inside, Qin Yuru couldn't really fall out with them. She immediately put on a fake smile and said, "It doesn't matter. Sister Qi has always been so reckless. Sister Yuru is really tolerant." Qi Rongji also put on a fake smile and said. After that, she stepped into the room first. After coming in, she stood behind old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion and put on a very well-behaved look. Qin Yuru frowned with hatred and suppressed the anger in her eyes. Of course, she would not quarrel with Qi Rongji at this time. Holding the servant girl's hand, she entered the room and gracefully bowed to old Madame. Then she also stood aside. Old Madame looked her up and down with a smile on her face, and then looked at the elders. "This is the girl I like. At first glance, I can tell that she is well-educated and polite. Although she is occasionally rude, she will not do anything out of line according to her character. She is often forced to do so." Her words sounded like she was talking about the reason, but the joy on her face had exposed her thoughts. The few clan elders looked at each other and nodded. In fact, they did not have much power. They were just witnesses. Immediately, the oldest one among them nodded and said, "She is indeed a good girl. It's all up to old Madame's command. Then write her down." Old Madame said with a smile. "Which one do you write it under?" The elder, who had benefited from it, naturally nodded and asked. Anyway, old Madame had recognized it, so she could remember which one she wanted to remember. Qi Rongji's face changed with anger. When she was recognized by Madame of Duke Xing as her adopted daughter, she just recognized her and did not record her in the family tree. Looking at Qin Yuru's attitude, it seemed that she was really going to write her down. "Just remember that my eldest son has died. If he was still alive, maybe he would have such a big daughter." Old Madame said with a sad face. She stretched out her handkerchief and wiped the corners of her eyes. Her smile was gone. The dead eldest son was the former heir of Duke Xing. As Qin Wanru said, there was something fishy about Qin Yuru's recognition of her relatives this time. Under the name of the former heir of Duke Xing. That's the best. The clan elders nodded and thought this was a good proposal. Since old Madame liked this first miss of Qin's mansion so much, it was indeed appropriate to record her under the name of the former heir of Duke Xing. In terms of status, she was extremely noble. Under the name of the former heir of Duke Xing. The former heir of Duke Xing didn't have such a big daughter, did he? Qi Rongji couldn't bear it anymore and stood out from behind old Madame. Old Madame frowned unhappily. She didn't care whether she liked or disliked Qi Rongji. According to her daughter-in-law, she could only casually recognize Qi Rongji at that time, but it was just a helpless move. In the past, she didn't let Qi Rongji come to pay respects to her, but Qi Rongji was very polite and always came to her, looking very filial. But this was just the appearance. Old Madame had met many people, so how could she not understand Qi Rongji's meaning? In the past, she didn't like Qi Rongji very much, but just maintained a gentle appearance. Now seeing Qi Rongji jump out, she became more and more unhappy. She wanted to recognize her granddaughter, but what did it have to do with Qi Rongji? What she was doing here? At this time, it was not only old Madame who frowned, but also several others present. Madame Dowager of Qin's mansion was the calmest. Her eyes fell on Qi Rongji's face, and she looked at her calmly without saying anything. This was Duke Xing's mansion, and it was not her turn to speak. Zhuozhuo said that she only needed to watch a good show and be a witness. "Rongji, leave now. What nonsense are you talking about?" Madame of Duke Xing also looked unhappy and scolded. "Mother, first Miss Qin is 15 years old now, and she passed the coming-of-age ceremony before the spring festival. When she was in Jiangzhou, she married my elder brother after the coming-of-age ceremony. But because she wanted to find a higher position, she took advantage of Qin Wanru's childish nature and let her get on the bridal sedan chair instead of her. Later, she made a scandal that she secretly met my elder brother after breaking off the engagement. She had no choice but to stay in Jiangzhou, so she hurried to the capital city. Although Qi Rongji was afraid of Madame of Duke Xing, she was more afraid that Qin Yuru would steal her favor, so she immediately told her what had happened in Jiangzhou in detail. Hearing her words, the elders all looked at Qin Yuru in astonishment. They almost didn't believe that such a shameless girl was the one that old madam in front of them liked. They had accepted old madam's money before, so they certainly did things according to old madam's order. It had nothing to do with them whether Duke Xing's mansion accepted a granddaughter or not. But when he heard Qi Rongji's words, his expression immediately turned cold. If this was true, it could bring disaster to the entire Shao clan. The reputation of the women of Shao family might be affected when the girl in front of them was recorded in the family tree. What nonsense are you talking about? Old madam was furious and shouted. Old madam, I am not talking nonsense. If you don't believe me, I have 2 witnesses here. You can see them. Qi Rongji suppressed the panic in her heart and said. Last night, she not only stole the material evidence, but also brought 2 witnesses from her mansion. They were servants brought by Qi Tianyu from Jiangzhou, and they knew clearly about the things between Qi Tianyu and Qin Yuru. When she arrived, Qi Tianyu was not there, so she went into Qi Tianyu's study and rummaged around. She said that she was looking for some books, but she turned the study upside down. Qi Tianyu's servant originally didn't want to let her in, but she said that she was looking for a very important book. If it was missing, they would be held responsible, so the servant had no choice but to let her in. After Qi Rongji found the material evidence she wanted, she took the 2 important servants away, saying that they could help deal with some affairs. At this time, she came prepared. Although she was a little scared, she didn't panic. Qi Rongji, don't talk nonsense. Where did you get the witnesses? Hearing this, Qin Yuru immediately knew that it was not good. The dignified look on her face was immediately disordered, and she turned pale with fright. The thing in Jiangzhou was a bad tumor in her root, and she was most afraid of people mentioning it. Chapter 423. There were 2 people standing in the hall. They were 2 servants sent from Jiangzhou. Qin Yuru's expression changed drastically when she saw their faces. Qin Yuru was not the only one who changed her expression. Qin Wanru's eyes swept across the people who had changed their expressions, and her eyes became darker. The people who had changed their expressions had their own plans. They had thought that they were about to get what they wanted, but they did not expect Qi Rongji to appear and disrupt their plans. Sister Yuru, don't tell me you don't know them. Qi Rongji stared at Qin Yuru's face and smiled coldly. First miss, don't tell me you really don't know me. My mother tried to push the blame of your marriage to Second Mississippi. I secretly sent a message to the first young master of the Qi family, saying that Second Miss robbed you of your marriage and you were the victim. She also hinted to the first young master of the Qi family to avenge you and ruin Second Miss's reputation. My mother and I were so loyal to you, but you beat my mother to death and wanted to silence me. A girl kneeling on the ground raised her head. She was about 17 or 18 years old, and the most eye-catching thing about her was the scar on her forehead. It ran from her forehead to the right side of her cheek, almost disfiguring her entire face. Even so, the girl's pretty eyes and brows could still be vaguely seen. You are Shi Xiang. Qin Yuru covered her mouth with a handkerchief and said in a trembling voice. Shi Xiang was the daughter of Nanny Fang, who was in charge of Qin Wanru's courtyard. She was the second-class servant girl in Qin Yuru's courtyard. Qin Wanru's eyes swept across Shi Xiang's face calmly, and a trace of ridicule flashed across her eyes. After Nanny Fang's accident, she had thought of looking for Nanny Fang's daughter to get some more useful evidence from her. Unexpectedly, she found out that Shi Xiang had accidentally fallen into the river and drowned. The river was very fast, and many people had drowned in Jiangzhou. Moreover, she was just a second-class servant girl, so it was fine that the master did not pursue the matter. Qin Wanru had suspected such a coincidence at the beginning, but she had few useful people around her, so she couldn't find out the truth for a while, and then left it unsettled. Now it seemed that when Nanny Fong was in trouble, Qin Yuru also took action. But to her surprise, this servant girl was saved by the people of Qi's mansion. It seemed that Qi Tianyu even brought her to the capital. Qi Tianyu already knew the inside story, but he still pretended to be tactful with Qin Yuru. No one knew what he was plotting. Does eldest miss find it strange that this servant is still alive? At that time, eldest miss sent people to deceive me to the river and wanted to take my life. Unfortunately, I was lucky enough to survive. My mother and I wholeheartedly wanted to harm second miss for eldest miss, but in the end, we ended up like this. It's all retribution, but isn't eldest miss afraid of being struck by lightning? Shi Xiang raised her head and looked at Qin Yuru with hatred. Her voice was not loud, but every word she said was sharp. Her hatred was so cold that it almost hit Qin Yuru hard. Qin Yuru took 2 steps back, swayed, and almost couldn't stand, and her face was as pale as snow. Old Madame of Duke Yong's mansion's fingers were trembling. Although she loved her granddaughter Qin Yuru, she also loved Di Yan. At this time, she found that her granddaughter was really, as the rumor said, almost married to the first young master of Qi's mansion. Moreover, according to the servant girl's words, the two of them also had a very ambiguous relationship in private. His face first turned green, then white, and then red from his anger. No matter how biased she was, she knew that Qin Yuru really had an affair with Qi Tianyu, and she felt sorry for her grandson. Originally, as Qin Yuru's grandmother, she should scold Shi Xiang at this time and stop her from talking, but as Di Yan's grandmother, she really wanted to hear the truth. After Di Yan and Qin Yuru came to the capital, they all told her about the past in Jiangzhou. Old Madame of Duke Yong's mansion once told her about the past in Jiangzhou. They all said that it was fake, and it was the past between Qin Wanru and Qi Tianyu, and had nothing to do with Qin Yuru. It was just that some people didn't know the names of the 2 sisters, so they spread false rumors. Old Madame of Duke Yong's mansion naturally believed in her daughter and granddaughter whom she hadn't seen for many years. Unexpectedly, the truth turned out to be like this. Thinking of Di Yan crying in front of her and asking to break off the engagement, old Madame of Duke Yong's mansion felt sorry for her grandson. Now she didn't know whether she should stop Qin Yuru or not. She could only gnash her teeth and continue to listen. At this time, she was thinking about how to explain it to Di Yan. At this time, she felt lucky that Countess Yong had something to do today and didn't come. Otherwise, after hearing this, she would definitely not let Qin Yuru marry into the mansion. You bitch, how dare you frame me like this? Qin Yuru was so anxious that she almost couldn't breathe. She gritted her teeth and said, "If you frame the old master, you will be beaten to death after being sent to the official." Madame of Duke Xing said sternly on the side. "This servant has already died once. This servant's mother was beaten to death. All of this is a generous gift from eldest Mississippi. This servant will never forget it." Shi Xiang sneered and said with hatred. There was a trace of blood at the bottom of her eyes. Both her words and her expression showed that she hated Qin Yuru very much. She reached out and took out a letter from her bosom. This is the letter that the first miss asked to meet the first young master of the Qi family. In fact, this letter was not hidden by Shi Xiang at that time. It was found by Qi Rongji from Qi Tianyu's study this time. When they were in Jiangzhou, Qin Yuru and Qi Tianyu were in love with each other. Although the two families had formed an alliance, it was not easy for unmarried men and women to meet each other. It was normal for them to write some letters with deep feelings in private. Sometimes they avoided meeting the adults in the mansion and wrote letters to meet each other. At that time, Qin Yuru also wrote a letter to meet Qi Tianyu out of habit. In order to prevent Qi Tianyu from misunderstanding her, she deliberately wrote a lot of bad things about Qin Yuru in the letter. On the one hand, she said that she wanted to meet Qi Tianyu very much, but because Qin Yuru robbed her of her marriage, she fell ill and couldn't recover. On the other hand, she said that she missed Qi Tianyu very much. She wrote a lot of words with affection. Although she didn't directly resent Qin Wanru, her words were full of self-reproach and even a sense of self-abandonment. She implied that if she couldn't marry Qi Tianyu, she would have no love in life and it would be difficult for her to be happy in the future. And it was Qin Wanru who caused all this. "Old madam, look at this letter." Qi Rongji took the letter from Xixiang and proudly handed it to old madam of Duke Xing's mansion. She didn't expect that she would gain so much. "Old madam, these letters are all fake. This servant girl was indeed my former servant girl, but later she was beaten and sold by me because of something. I didn't expect that she would hold a grudge against me and now frame me." Although Qin Yuru wanted to grab the letter, she also knew that she couldn't really act rashly. "Framed you? Sister Yuru, it's good that you don't frame others. My brother's reputation is ruined by you." Qi Rongji sneered mercilessly and handed the letter in her hand to Nanny Yu. Nanny Yu silently took it and handed it to old madam of Duke Xing's mansion who was sitting on the high seat. Old madam of Duke Xing's mansion reached out to take it. After reading it carefully, she handed it to old madam of Duke Yong's mansion beside her with a very ugly face. After old madam of Duke Yong's mansion read it, her face turned blue and red, and she was ashamed and angry at the same time. If Qin Yuru wasn't her biological granddaughter and if Madame D wasn't in such a situation now, she almost couldn't help throwing the letter to Qin Yuru's face. Old madam of Duke Yong's mansion held the paper tightly with trembling fingers. At this moment, even the experienced and knowledgeable old madam of Duke Yong didn't know what she should do. She wanted to destroy the letter, but she also knew that if she did so, people would think that she was trying to cover it up. Her identity didn't allow her to do such a thing. She glanced sideways at a trusted old maid standing behind her and winked. The trusted old maid understood and took a step forward to take the paper and tear it. The master couldn't tear it, but the servants could. After tearing it, they could put the blame on the servant girl. The letter didn't fall into the hands of the old maid. Another hand quickly took the letter from old madam of Duke Yong's mansion. "Old madam, after reading it, let our madam dowager have a look." Yu Jie said with a smile and reached out to hand the paper to old madam Qin. Qin Wanru had asked her to keep an eye on old madam of Duke Yong for fear that she would destroy the evidence. Old madam Qin read it calmly, sighed heavily, and handed the letter to Qin Huayong. Qin Huayong's face was very ugly. After reading 10 lines at a glance, he slammed the letter in his hand on the table and shouted, "Unfilial girl, how dare you do this? Father, this letter is really not written by me. Someone deliberately imitated my handwriting. How could I write such a letter?" Qin Yuru covered her face and burst into tears. "Not written by you?" Old madam of Duke Yong's mansion rolled her eyes and suddenly felt that she was alive again. "Grandma, of course, this letter is not written by me. I don't know what Sister Rongji means. Why does she treat me like this? Is it because I am favored by old madam? If so, then I don't recognize you as my relative. Sister Rongji, please let me go." Qin Yuru turned around in tears and knelt down in front of Qi Rongji. Tears fell down one by one, and she looked very sad. She clearly knew that she could not admit it at this time. If she refused to admit it, she didn't believe that Qi Rongji could do anything to her. The letter could be forged, and the witness could deliberately frame her. At this moment, Qin Yuru's mind was unprecedentedly clear. The biggest hatred between her and Qi Rongji was that she was going to become the adopted granddaughter of old madam of Duke Xing's mansion. Qi Rongji was afraid that she would steal old madam's favor, so she exposed the past at all costs. She bet that Qi Rongji could not take out other evidence except this evidence that could be forged. Most of the people present were on her side. As long as she insisted, she didn't believe that Qi Rongji could do anything to her. Chapter 424. Sister Yuru, it's just a servant girl. You said that I framed you. Then what about the official document? Did I frame you too? Qi Rongji sneered and shattered Qin Yuru's fantasy. Previously, you lied that you were 13 years old and asked your mother to send someone to write a letter to my mother. You wanted to change your household registration in Jiangzhou to 13 years old. You said that you had made a mistake in your age. My mother was careful and copied down the page that you changed. Qin Yuru's eyes lit up. Qi Rongji nodded to a servant standing behind Xixiang. The servant in his 20s hurriedly presented a letter in his hand. Qi Rongji took it, waved it in her hand, and said proudly, "This is the original letter written by Madame D to my mother." Qin Yuru, you won't say that this is forged again, will you? Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion, who was sitting in the first seat, couldn't sit still anymore. This was not an ordinary thing. It was related to the officials. Although it was not a big deal to change a girl's age, this kind of thing could be big or small. If it was brought up in a big way, it might lead to a big deal. What the hell is going on? Qin Huayong also couldn't sit still. Uncle, you will know the authenticity of this letter after reading it. Qi Rongji handed the letter in her hand to Qin Huayong. Qin Huayong opened the letter in his hand. The more he read, the more his face changed. Father, these are all fake. They are all fake. It is Qi Rongji who framed me. Father, you won't listen to an outsider and believe her words, right? Qin Yuru didn't expect that Qi Rongji had such a thing. Household registration was not something that could be easily obtained. She cried and said, "Ning Yuan Army General, can I have a look?" Madame of Duke Xing looked up at Qin Huayong and said. Nanny Sheng hurried over. Qin Huayong handed the letter to Nanny Sheng with a livid face. Nanny Sheng took it, turned around, walked to Madame of Duke Xing, and handed the letter to her. Qin Wanru turned sideways and glanced at Madame of Duke Xing's face silently. There was coldness in her eyes. As expected, when it came to age, she couldn't sit still anymore. Qin Yuru's reputation didn't matter much to Madame of Duke Xing as long as it didn't interfere with her business. However, Madame of Duke Xing had to pay attention to Qin Yuru's age. If their ages didn't match, it would definitely ruin her plans. The corners of her mouth lifted silently. She lowered her head again and gently rubbed the handkerchief in her hand. This matter was getting more and more lively. She wanted to see how they would continue to be lively. My maternal grandmother should be here soon. The hall was full of people. Apart from her grandmother who was sincerely on her side, everyone else had their own considerations. In the end, she needed strong support. Madame of Duke Xing frowned and finished reading the letter in her hand. She raised her head and looked at Qi Rongji's face coldly. She said with a sad face, "Rongji, why did you do this?" Mother. Mother, what do you mean? Qi Rongji suddenly had a bad feeling. This was different from what she had imagined. Why did you frame up Yuru? Is it because she will also become the Miss of Duke Xing's mansion? I heard that when you were in Jiangzhou, you were also a pair of best friends. Why did you fight with each other like this? You are my adopted daughter, and Yuru is old Madame's adopted granddaughter. In fact, you will not contradict each other. I will still love you, and so will old Madame. Why did you take it so hard and do this? Madame of Duke Xing's face was full of sadness, but her expression was cold. Mother, I didn't. It's true. It's all true. If you don't believe it, you can check. Qi Rongji was shocked and screamed. Things changed too fast. Before coming, Qi Rongji had already thought of the people she would face today, including Qin Yuru and people from Duke Yong's mansion. But she didn't expect to face Madame of Duke Xing. At this time, shouldn't Madame of Duke Xing deal with this matter fairly? Why did she feel that Madame of Duke Xing was trying hard to protect Qin Yuru? Qin Yuru was liked by old Madame, not by Madame of Duke Xing. Why did Madame of Duke Xing protect her so much? Check what? Go to Jiangzhou to check. Rongji, well, I know what you did today is because you're jealous that Yuru is favored by old Madame. Don't worry. From now on, you and Yuru will call each other sisters. Just let it go. It's just a child's trifle. If it gets serious, it will make old Madam unhappy. Madam of Duke Xing interrupted Qi Rongji's words and said. She seemed to turn a big problem into a small one and a small one into nothing, which meant that Qi Rongji was not sensible and made a scene to fight for old Madam's favor. It was not a big deal. But there was also a bit of threat in her words. In Duke Xing's mansion, old Madam's words carried enormous weight. If Qi Rongji offended old Madam, she would not have a good ending. The clan elders looked at each other. Was this really the truth of the matter? Just now, neither old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion nor Qin Huayong showed the evidence in their hands to the elders. Until now, they couldn't tell whether it was true or not. But they thought it couldn't be fake since it caused such a big scene. Sister Rongji, apologize to my big sister. After that, you are still good sisters, and you can get along well with each other in the future. Qin Wanru suddenly persuaded her in a natural and unrestrained manner. She looked at the group of people coldly and knew that it was time for her to speak. Sisters getting along. Reconcile with Qin Yuru and her sister. Today, they had already fallen out with each other. How could they reconcile with Qin Yuru and her sister? Qi Rongji's panic-stricken and bewildered expression suddenly became firm. Others might not know Qin Yuru's temperament, but Qi Rongji was not so naive. She had known Qin Yuru for a long time, so how could she not know Qin Yuru's vicious nature? If he missed this opportunity, he would really die without a burial ground. Before Qin Yuru married into Duke Xing's mansion, old Madam of Duke Xing liked her and Madam of Duke Xing protected her. If Qin Yuru really recognized Qin Yuru as a member of Duke Xing's mansion and was recorded in the family tree, how could she let Qi Rongji live? Mother, it's not that I don't want to listen to you, but Qin Yuru is too vicious. I don't know what she wants to do. She shows that she is not the daughter of Madame D, and then she wants to change her age. Now the princes haven't chosen a wife. I don't know whether Qin Yuru does this because of this. I heard that she deliberately went to Prince Cheng's mansion to seduce Prince Cheng. If the royal family is in trouble because of this, Rongji can't bear the responsibility. Qi Rongji thought of the words she occasionally heard from the two servants before and immediately said harshly. Hearing her words, everyone in the hall changed their expressions. This matter was extremely terrifying when they thought about it carefully. Which young lady would change her age for no reason? Unless there was a special reason. Changing her age to marry into the royal family and it was disadvantageous to the royal family? Several clan elders panicked. Qin Yuru would be recorded in the family tree. If something happened to her, the whole Shao clan would be implicated. If this matter was related to the chaos in the imperial harem, the whole Shao clan would not be able to escape. Old Madam, this matter needs to be investigated carefully. Old Madam, it's better not to record her under the name of the former heir of Duke Xing. If something really happens to her, I'm afraid the whole Shao clan will be affected. Old Madam, this matter needs to be considered at length. Several clan elders immediately stood up and hurriedly tried to persuade her. Previously, they thought it was just a formality, but now they found that it was not a small matter. Even if Duke Xing's mansion was powerful, they might not be able to bear it. The clan elders did not dare to be a bystander anymore. This matter was related to their own lives. They saw what happened just now. No matter how they saw it, there was something wrong with the first miss of Qin's mansion. She not only had a bad character but also behaved suspiciously. This was not recognizing her as a relative, but following her into trouble. Old Madam of Duke Xing frowned tightly and did not say a word. Things had come to this point, which was completely beyond her expectation. Did she change her age for that purpose? Qi Rongji, don't slander me. Everything is fabricated by you just to prevent me from recognizing old Madam as my grandmother. You, how can you be so evil? Qin Yuru was shocked and said angrily. Sister Yuru, do you know how old I am? Qi Rongji sneered. Who doesn't know that you are 13 years old? Qin Yuru said harshly. Yes, but I have always called you sister, and you have called me sister just now. Qi Rongji said. Qin Yuru felt guilty for a moment, but she immediately bluffed and said, so what? There is still a difference between people of the same age. Of course, she could not say that her real age was 15 years old at this time. Yes, there is a difference between people of the same age. But the age that Sister Yuru changed is exactly 1 month younger than me. Moreover, everyone in Jiangzhou knows that you have to get on the bridal sedan chair when you marry my elder brother. Let me ask you, if you are really only 13 years old, how can you marry my elder brother? Qi Rongji threw caution to the wind at this time and pretended not to see Madame of Duke Xing's gloomy face. There were many people who got married at the age of 13, but it was rare to get married at the age of 13 without special circumstances. Everyone loved their daughter and wanted to stay with her for a few more years. I don't know why mother did this. Qin Yuru covered her face and cried. She meant that Madame D did not love her, so she let her get married early. At this time, she only felt that Qi Rongji's words were good for her. If she wanted to become the real Miss of Duke Xing's mansion, she must let others think that Madame D did not treat her well and thought that she was not her biological daughter. Qi Rongji's words gave her an opportunity. But what she said was equivalent to admitting what Shi Xiang had said before. She and Qi Tianyu did have an ambiguous relationship, and they were indeed talking about marriage. Old Madame of Duke Yang's mansion could not sit still. She could pretend that everything was fake and she did not know what Qin Yuru said, but now Qin Yuru almost admitted it. She clenched her fists under her sleeves and looked at Qin Yuru with disappointment. When she was about to remind her, she heard a cold snort from outside. You mean Madame D is not your biological mother? Then who is your biological mother? Chapter 425. There was a group of people at the door, and Ruyan Great Elder Princess was among them. Seeing the angry Ruyan Great Elder Princess, Madame of Duke Xing felt that something was wrong. She hurriedly lowered her head and gave some instructions to Nanny Sheng. Nanny Sheng secretly retreated with an extremely ugly face. She didn't expect to use the backup plan that First Miss and Madame had planned, but this was not the best time. At this time, everyone looked at the door. Except for Qin Wanru, no one noticed that Nanny Sheng had left quietly. Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion stood up. Rui and Great Elder Princess had not entered the gate of Duke Xing's mansion for several years. Even if she wanted to see her grandson, Rui and Great Elder Princess would take her away. This time she came with bad intentions. With a cold face, Rui and Great Elder Princess glanced at everyone present and sneered. Before old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion invited her, she stepped in and sat in the first seat of the guest seat. Old Madame of Duke Yang's mansion, who had been sitting in this seat, could only step back. All the people stepped back, but no one dared to sit down. However, old Madame of Duke Xing slowly sat down and looked at Ruyan Great Elder Princess with disgust. She calmed down after taking a deep breath. One of the important reasons why she didn't like her daughter-in-law was that she didn't like her daughter-in-law's mother. Ruyan Great Elder Princess dared to look down on her in the name of Great Elder Princess, which was really annoying. Old Madame rarely felt this kind of annoyance from others. Except for her eldest daughter-in-law, only Ruyan Great Elder Princess in front of her and Qin Wanru, who had just met her. Even if Qin Wanru saved her life, this feeling of disgust could not fade away. She inexplicably disliked Qin Wanru and felt uncomfortable when she saw her. Old Madame thought that this was mainly because Qin Wanru's previous behavior made her feel disgusted. She was greedy and disobeyed the elder's words, which was really unpleasant. Great Elder Princess rarely comes here. What a rare guest. Serve tea. Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion calmed down and showed a smile on her face. Ruyan Great Elder Princess had a noble status, so she didn't dare to offend her casually. Madame of Duke Xing gestured to the servant girl beside her. The servant girl hurriedly brought in a cup of tea and respectfully placed it in front of Ruyan Great Elder Princess. Qin Wanru took a deep look at old Madame and lowered her head quietly. Her long eyelashes fluttered once or twice like thick fans to cover the depth at the bottom of her eyes. Grandma came at the right time. He finally had someone who could make decisions for him. If I didn't come, would I have to recognize a fake granddaughter? Rui and Great Elder Princess snorted. Pretending to be a relative of the emperor is a capital crime. Qin Yuru had been held aside. At this time, she couldn't help shivering and looked at Madame of Duke Xing in panic. Madame of Duke Xing raised her head calmly. Her cold eyes fell on Qin Yuru's face and she smiled at her. Qin Yuru was so scared that she hurriedly turned her head to avoid her eyes. She held Mei Shui's wrist tightly and her face was as pale as snow. Great Elder Princess, why do you say so? It's just a nominal granddaughter under the name of the eldest son. The eldest son used to like girls. If he has a daughter, he will like her even in the netherworld. Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion said lightly. Infanta Qinghua had royal blood, but after a woman got married, the surname of the child would be the surname of the husband. Even if the child was not a member of the bride's family, it was just a nominal granddaughter. So there was no need to inform Rui and Great Elder Princess. Recorded under the name of the heir of the duke, then whose name is the biological mother? I don't remember that the heir of the duke has other concubines. Rui and Great Elder Princess sneered. Since it was recorded in the family tree, there must be a biological father and a biological mother. The eldest son also had a servant at the beginning. He wanted to promote her to be a concubine, so he recorded her name in the family tree. Later, when Infanta Qinghua married, he moved away. Let's record her name. Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion said. If Rui and Great Elder Princess did not come, of course, it would be recorded under the name of Infanta Qinghua. But now Rui and Great Elder Princess came, so they had to change the name. Why don't I know that the heir of the duke has a servant girl? Rui and Great Elder Princess said. He did have one before, but later, when Infanta Qinghua married, he moved her away. Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion said calmly. In fact, there was such a person, but it was not prepared early. Old Madame gave it to her after she heard that her son disregarded her wishes and went to ask for an imperial edict. In order to disgust Infanta Qinghua, Old Madame also asked someone to record her name in the family tree. She only said that as soon as Infanta Qinghua married, she would be promoted to be a concubine. In order to avoid trouble in the future, she was directly recorded as a concubine in the family tree. However, her son didn't care about the servant girl at all. Later, she was thrown into the farthest corner and locked up. Later, the servant girl couldn't help but escape and disappeared. Later, Old Madame also realized that it must be her son's trick, so she directly let her go. Later, she went to check the servant girl's contract and found that she had left long ago. For this reason, Old Madame also severely beat the heir of the duke, but now she pretended that there had been such a thing. So, it should still be recorded in the name of the heir of the duke, or should my daughter be the mother? Rui and Great Elder Princess didn't argue with Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion about this, but just asked coldly. No matter whose name was recorded, Infanta Qinghua would bear the title of the mistress. It was not easy for Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion to answer. After thinking for a while, she slowly said, if Rui and Great Elder Princess thinks so, it's okay. Great Elder Princess, don't be angry. This matter should indeed be discussed with you. But you have been unwilling to take care of the affairs of our mansion for so many years, so we don't want to bother you with this small matter. That's why we didn't inform you. Madame of Duke Xing said with a flattering smile on her side. Since Infanta Qinghua bore the title of the mistress, no matter from which aspect, it was necessary to inform Rui and Great Elder Princess. In this matter, Duke Xing's mansion was in the wrong. Seeing that it was not good, Madame of Duke Xing hurriedly stepped forward to remedy it. Discuss with me. Discuss what? Accept an impostor. Rui and Great Elder Princess's smile became colder and colder. She glanced at Madame of Duke Xing with disdain on her face. Like old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion, Rui, and great elder princess disliked the pair of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law in front of her the most. They behaved differently on the surface and behind their backs, which was really annoying. Great elder princess, I just want to accept an adopted granddaughter. How can there be an imposter? Although old madam was unhappy in her heart, she only showed a trace of helplessness on her face. She just wanted to accept an adopted granddaughter, and it was not a real bloodline inheritance, so it didn't matter whether she was an imposter or not. Old madam thought that as long as she recognized her as her biological granddaughter, it didn't matter whether Rui, and great elder princess recognized her or not. Anyway, her son's bloodline had been found, and she had done her son justice. Originally, she didn't want Rui, and great elder princess, to know this matter, because she was afraid that she would make trouble. Do I need to change my household registration to accept an adopted granddaughter? Do I need to know that she is not Madame D's biological daughter to accept an adopted granddaughter? Do I need to go to Jiangzhou for such a long time to find such a qualified granddaughter? Old madam, do you really think I am easy to be deceived? Seeing that old madam was still concealing it, Rui, and great elder princess flew into a rage. Okay, let's go to the palace now and ask Empress Dowager and Empress to judge. Duke Xing's mansion sent people out in the name of finding a biological daughter for heir of Duke Xing and my daughter, but now you found an impostor. Duke Xing's mansion was afraid that the impostor's conditions did not match, so you deliberately changed her birth date and 8 characters. Duke Xing's mansion should bear the crime of deceiving the emperor. Thinking that her daughter was forced to leave by this pair of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, Rui, and great elder princess trembled with anger. She raised her daughter like a pearl and finally ended up like this. How could she not feel distressed? In the past, there was no evidence, but today it was different. Her biological granddaughter was beside her. Since she recognized Qin Wanru, Rui, and great elder princess had not been idle. She listened to her granddaughter's orders and waited for such a day. She had prepared a lot of evidence in her hands. How could her granddaughter be impostor? The crime of deceiving the monarch? The faces of several clan elders became very ugly, and they all regretted coveting the money of Duke Xing's mansion. If this was really the crime of deceiving the monarch, the entire Xiao family would be implicated. Qin Wanru glanced at Qin Huayong, who looked calm. Since Rui and great elder princess came in, although his face was not good, he was still calm. Compared with other people, Qin Huayong was the calmest one. But the calmer he was, the colder Qin Wanru's eyes were. Did father really know nothing? Was Madame D really so powerful? Did Qin Huayong really know nothing? Did her biological father really leave without leaving a word? Madame D had no affection for her, but what about Qin Huayong? His biological father had saved his life. Could it be that he really didn't have any feelings for him? Her hands trembled slightly, and her heart beat suddenly. It was a little painful. She had raised him for so long in the last life and this life. Even if there was no affection before, what about after? In the last life, when she fell into that miserable situation, she did not see Qin Huayong do anything. It seemed that everything was done by Madame D and her daughter, and he saw nothing. Had he really been blinded by her? In the last life, Qin Huayong's official position was promoted again and again, and his career was very successful. Was he really a muddle-headed person in family affairs? Did Madame D cover the truth with one hand, and Qin Huayong did not have any doubt? There were too many questions hidden in her heart, but every more doubts made her heart hurt more. She took a deep breath, suppressed the pain in her heart, and looked up again, only to see coldness. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. She would get to the bottom of it. Old Madam. Madam, there are people outside, saying that they are looking for second Miss Qin. An old maid came in a hurry. Seeing so many people in the flower hall, she was stunned for a moment, but she still said to Madame of Duke Xing timidly. How did they come here? This is not Qin's mansion. Madame of Duke Xing answered unhappily. No one was in the mood to receive other people at this time. Chapter 426. Qin Wanru's biological parents. Everyone in the reception hall was stunned by his words. What kind of drama was going on? Second sister's biological parents? Qin Yuru's eyes lit up and she said happily, invite them in, invite them in. She had been driven to the end of her rope. How could she not be happy when such a thing suddenly appeared? Zhuozhua's biological parents? How could it be possible? Old Madame Qin had been watching quietly for a long time. She couldn't get a word in before, but now she couldn't help frowning and glancing at Qin Huayong. Qin Huayong didn't say anything and just looked at Madame of Duke Xing, let them in. Madame of Duke Xing said helplessly. Although this was not Qin's mansion, these people of Qin's mansion were here, so she couldn't be unreasonable and not let them see them. Hearing Madame of Duke Xing's words, the old maid hurriedly left and soon came in with a middle-aged couple. As soon as they entered the door, the middle-aged woman's eyes fell on Qin Wanru. It seemed that she recognized Qin Wanru at a glance. She was surprised and happy and even wiped her tears. Are you Wanru? I am your mother. The middle-aged woman rushed over. Yu Jia took a step forward and stopped him from going any further. The middle-aged man who came later also had red eyes, but he was a man. He took a few steps forward and looked at Qin Wanru with excitement but didn't lose his composure. Are you second Miss Qin's biological parents? Madame of Duke Xing looked up and down at the couple and asked. The middle-aged couple's clothes didn't look gorgeous. It was obvious that they were from ordinary families. But at this time, looking at Qin Wanru's surprised and happy look, people really felt that what they said was true. There were 3 misses in the flower hall. As soon as they came in, they saw Qin Wanru and only talked to her. Obviously, they recognized her. Yes, we are Wanru's biological parents. At that time, the child disappeared during the war. Later, we looked for her for many years but couldn't find her. We thought something had happened to her. The middle-aged woman wiped her tears and looked at Qin Wanru with tears. Her surprised and happy look seemed to be true. My second daughter is my own. She wasn't picked up from the streets. Qin Huayong frowned and said. He had never admitted that he was not Qin Wanru's biological father. Qin Wanru's eyes moved from the middle-aged man's face to his face. Even at this time, Qin Huayong was still as persistent as before. Although his persistence was fragile and almost broke at the slightest touch, he was so persistent as if he would protect Qin Wanru at any time. If there really was such a relationship, how could she have led such a miserable life in her previous life? There was no one to protect her. She pursed her lips tightly, forming a thin, cold line. She wanted to see how this show was going to play out next. She had seen it clearly when Nanny Sheng left before. General Qin, this is really my daughter. Everyone in Jiangzhou knows that second miss is not your biological daughter. You don't have to hide it. The middle-aged man looked at Qin Huayong and pleaded. Of course, Wanru is my biological daughter. The rumors outside are all false. Qin Huayong's face turned cold impatiently when he heard the middle-aged man doubting Qin Wanru's identity. He was a general. His expression was cold and he had an aura of death and punishment. The middle-aged man became afraid and took a step back. However, he still begged, Great General Qin, I know that my daughter has been raised by you for so many years and has developed feelings for you. Naturally, you don't want her to return home, but she is our biological daughter. Do you really have the heart to separate her from her own flesh and blood? Do you not want her to be with her biological parents? General Qin, I beg you. The middle-aged woman knelt down in front of Qin Huayong. When she raised her head, her face was already covered in tears. General Qin, you adopted our daughter and raised her. You are indeed good to her. Our family is grateful. Even if we recognize her, if she doesn't want to go back with us, we won't force her. We just want to make up for so many years of regret. The middle-aged man's voice also choked with sobs. Second sister, are these your biological parents? Just recognize them. Before Qin Huayong spoke, Qin Yuru had already sighed deeply and said with a pitiful face. This. Qin Huayong was silent and did not speak. However, his tone and expression all showed that it was true. Qin Wanru was not his biological daughter. Even if he had originally insisted that Qin Wanru was his biological daughter, he could not be stubborn at this time. Old Madame Qin's face changed. She was a little pale with anger. Her body trembled slightly and it seemed that she was about to fall. Qin Wanru hurriedly stepped forward and held Madame Dowager. She reached out and gently pinched Madame Dowager's shoulder. She comforted her softly, "Grandma, don't worry. Just watch. It seems that second miss is really not General Qin's biological daughter. Then she should be the biological daughter of this couple. It is also a good thing." Finally, father and daughter, mother and daughter meet. Madame of Duke Xing sighed softly and wiped the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief. It seemed that she was also moved by the scene in front of her. "Madame of Duke Xing, how do you know that the person in front of you has a relationship with me? How can you be so sure without asking?" Qin Wanru asked calmly. "Wanru, we are really your biological parents. Look, I also brought the clothes you wore when you were a child." As soon as the middle-aged woman heard Qin Wanru's words, she immediately took off the bag she was carrying on her back and spread it on the ground. She pointed at a few small clothes exposed inside and said. The clothes were very old and seemed to have been worn for several years. Such small clothes should be the flowery clothes worn by a 3- or 4-year-old girl. Qin Wanru looked at these old flowery clothes extremely calmly, with her eyes full of coldness. These few items are enough to prove it. There are many clothes for little girls in this world. Wanru, how can you not recognize us? We are really your biological parents. Do you know why we recognized you as soon as we came in? You look exactly the same as your grandmother when she was a child. The middle-aged woman cried with tears. Yes, daughter, we are really your biological parents. You look very much like your aunt. She looked just like you when she was young. The middle-aged man also added eagerly. Looking at Qin Wanru with a nervous face, he really looked like her biological father who found her after many years. He wanted to be close to her, but he was afraid that she would be cold and disgusted, so he rubbed his hands tightly. Second sister, since they are your biological parents, you should recognize them. If you still like to stay in Qin's mansion, grandma and father have always loved you and will not let you leave. Qin Yuru persuaded. These words sounded not very pleasant. It seemed that Qin Wanru did not even intend to recognize her biological parents in order to covet the wealth of Ningyuan Army General's mansion. Ruyan Great Elder Princess, who was sitting on the top, did not interrupt. She just looked at the scene in front of her with a sneer. If it were not for her granddaughter's warning, she would not bear it at this time. She was her biological granddaughter, how could others recognize her? Big sister, if a couple came out at this time and recognized you as their biological daughter, would you recognize them? Qin Wanru smiled slightly and said to Qin Yuru unhurriedly. What nonsense! I am father's biological daughter. Qin Yuru snorted coldly and became unhappy. Big sister, since you know that you are my father's biological daughter, why do you always make a fuss as if Madame D treats you poorly, as if you are not your biological daughter? Qin Wanru changed the topic to Qin Yuru. What nonsense are you talking about? How could I do such a thing? Qin Yuru felt guilty and hurriedly dissociated herself. Big sister is the biological daughter of father and Madame D, but you repeatedly said in front of outsiders that Madame D is not good to you. Now you even changed your age. Is it because you don't want to be Madame D's biological daughter? The age of Madame D's biological daughter doesn't match the age of Madame D's biological daughter. Qin Wanru said coldly. These words, combined with the previous words, made everyone present turn their suspicious eyes to Qin Yuru. Qin Yuru did not expect that in this case, Qin Wanru could still lead this matter to her. She was so anxious that she almost twisted the handkerchief in her hand into a fried dough twist. She immediately sneered and said, "Qin Wanru, if you want to recognize your biological parents, then you don't have to recognize them. Why did you deliberately change the topic to me?" After saying that, she deliberately stepped back to avoid arousing suspicion, indicating that she had nothing to do with Qin Wanru's matter. The middle-aged woman kneeling suddenly turned to Qin Wanru and cried loudly, "Daughter, I am really your biological mother. Please recognize me. It was my fault that I didn't pay attention to you and let you go missing. For the sake that I gave birth to you, please don't resent me anymore." The loud cry immediately drew everyone's attention to Qin Wanru again. "General Qin, it is really not easy for us to find you all the way to the capital city. We bought our family property and came here in order to find our biological daughter. When we were in Jiangzhou, we had already investigated clearly, but you had left Jiangzhou, so we had no choice but to follow you to the capital city." The middle-aged man said to Qin Huayong, also about to shed tears. "Tell me, you said that Wanru is your biological daughter, but what proof do you have? Just this is not enough." Old Madam Qin calmed down, walked over and asked slowly, and Qin Wanru reached out to support her. Yes, we have proof, a lot of proof." The middle-aged man nodded repeatedly, with a look of relief that he had prepared for it. Everyone was skeptical of what he said. We have proof. At that time, the rebel army rebelled, and we fled with our daughter. In the chaos, we inevitably did not take good care of her. She fell at that time, and her knee was bruised. It is deep, and after so many years, it should still be there. If you don't believe it, you can directly ask Second Miss to check inside." The middle-aged man said with joy and excitement. Yes, my daughter fell at that time, and even after so many years, there should be a scar." The middle-aged woman also answered repeatedly. Chapter 427. Are you sure? Qin Huayong's face darkened and he looked a little hesitant. At this time, he no longer said that Qin Wanru must be his daughter. Of course, what he said also indicated that Qin Wanru was indeed not his daughter. Qin Wanru sneered in her heart. With this sentence, the fact that she was not Qin Huayong's biological daughter was settled. "Is there a scar on your daughter's knee?" Qin Wanru asked calmly. Yes, there is a scar, there must be a scar," the middle-aged woman said anxiously. "What if there is no scar?" Qin Wanru's eyes became more and more peaceful. A pair of bright watery eyes fixed on the middle-aged couple, only to make them feel guilty and unable to say a word for a while. Did the lady in front of them really have a scar on her knee? Did they really make a mistake? If there is no scar, she is naturally not our daughter. The middle-aged woman's eyes fluttered and her voice lowered. It was obvious that she was a little hesitant. Yes, if there is no scar, she is naturally not our daughter. The middle-aged man looked much calmer and said repeatedly. Second sister, go in and have a look. If there is really a family member, it means that you have found it. Qin Yuru jumped out again and said. What if it is not true? Qin Wanqiu sneered. Now she had an idea in her heart and there was no need to pretend to be courteous. Needless to say, it must be the masterpiece of Madame of Duke Xing that this middle-aged couple could come here. But she did not know whether this middle-aged couple knew that behind them was Madame of Duke Xing. With Madame of Duke Xing's cunning and cautious character, it seemed that she would not casually let others know that she was behind this. After this middle-aged couple entered the door, she even said less than Qin Yuru. On the contrary, Qin Yuru jumped out from time to time, which made people suspect that she was behind this. If Qin Wanru did not know Qin Yuru well, she would definitely think that it was really Qin Yuru. But even if Qin Yuru did not take the initiative to do this, it must have something to do with Qin Yuru. There was indeed a scar on his knee, but he didn't know when he got it. He only heard from his grandmother that he fell when he was young, and it seemed to be a serious fall. Since it was so serious, Madame D and her daughter naturally knew about it. In fact, there were many people in Jiangzhou who knew about it. However, no one else in the capital knew about it. If he hadn't learned medical skills from Mingqiu Nun, and if Mingqiu Nun hadn't given him a bottle of good ointment to apply to his old wounds, he wouldn't have been able to explain himself. What a painstaking effort. Since it's not true, there's no loss to my second sister, right? Qin Yuru said with a hollow laugh. Qin Yuru, what would you do if someone came to claim you as their daughter and asked you to take off your clothes to examine them? Qin Wanru asked calmly, raising her eyebrows and saying sarcastically. What nonsense are you talking about? Qin Yuru's face turned red. Since you think I'm talking nonsense, why do you think I should behave like this when others come to me? Qin Wanru looked at Qin Yuru's face and said with a smile. Qin Yuru was stunned. She was speechless for a moment. My daughter, we are really your parents. Even if our family's condition is not good now, it is still your family. We will definitely raise you well and never let you suffer any grievances. Don't disregard your parents. The middle-aged woman suddenly let out a heart-wrenching cry and rushed to Qin Wanru's front. Yujia immediately stood in front of Qin Wanru and stared at the middle-aged woman unkindly. Seeing the middle-aged woman crying on the ground with tears all over her face, several clan elders looked at Qin Wanru suspiciously. Was it true? Rui and Great Elder Princess lowered her head, picked up the teacup at her hand, took a sip, and leaned back. Her leisurely look made people feel that what happened in the court had nothing to do with her. Madame of Duke Xing felt relieved. It seemed that there was no relationship between Qin Wanru and Rui and Great Elder Princess, which was the best thing. Since Rui and Great Elder Princess didn't know the truth, even if she failed today, she still had a chance later. She couldn't be anxious, and she shouldn't be anxious. Second miss, do you want to have a look? You can ask your servant girl to go with you. Madame of Duke Xing took 2 steps forward and whispered to Qin Wanru with concern. If it is not true, you can also discourage them, lest they go out to talk nonsense and ruin your reputation. Go and have a look. Whether it is true or not, you have to show evidence. Old Madame of Duke Yong also interrupted. She also hoped that Qin Wanru would get out of Qin's mansion. It would be the best if there was such a thing. Sister Wanru, you go and have a look. You have to make them give up. Hearing Madame of Duke Xing's words, she immediately added, anyway, you are indeed not uncle's daughter. It is also a great thing to find your parents. Qin Yuru's matter had made Madame of Duke Xing unhappy. Now she would do whatever Madame of Duke Xing said. Grandma, am I really not father's biological daughter? Qin Wanru looked at old Madame Qin with a pale face and her lips trembled. Old Madame Qin sighed, and there seemed to be more wrinkles on her face. She said bitterly, Zhuozhua, even if you are not your father's biological daughter, you are my biological granddaughter. Father, am I not your biological daughter? Qin Wanru's face became increasingly pale. She turned to look at Qin Huayong, seeming to want to seek shelter. Her beautiful eyes were full of tears, and she was about to fall. Qin Huayong's face was very ugly. It could be seen that he also found it difficult to speak, but finally he nodded deeply in everyone's eyes. Wanru, don't worry. Even if you are not my biological daughter, I will treat you as my biological daughter. Although he did not directly answer Qin Wanru, everyone present understood his meaning. As expected, Qin Wanru was not Qin Huayong's biological daughter. Those scattered rumors outside were all true. No one felt surprised by Qin Huayong's words, and even felt that it should be so. If Qin Wanru was Qin Huayong's biological daughter, how dare Madame D treat Qin Wanru like this? Father, who are my biological parents? Qin Wanru stared at Qin Huayong and asked. Qin Huayong fell silent and did not speak for a long time. It seemed that he did not know what to say for a moment. He turned to look at the couple and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. But their behavior made people more certain that the couple in front of them were really Qin Wanru's biological parents. Sister Wanru, just accept them. They are your biological parents after all. They did not mean to lose you at that time. Qi Rongji kindly persuaded her again. Yes, second sister, a son will never dislike his mother for being ugly. No matter what, they are your parents. Qin Yuru was rarely consistent with Qi Rongji and also showed concern. Hurry up and accept them. We are in Duke Xing's mansion, not Ning Yuan Army General's mansion. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion also said, and looked at Qin Wanru with more disdain. Qin Wanru was really born in a humble family. Even if she was raised in Ning Yuan Army General's mansion, she was still humble from the root. Looking at these unreliable parents, she knew that the child born by them could not be a good person. Old Madam's own affairs had not been solved, and Rui, and great elder princess was still sitting here. She was worried, so she was not in the mood to help Qin's mansion solve the housework. At this time, she wanted to drive them away rudely. Accept them, accept them. An elder couldn't help but say. They are your biological parents after all. If you don't accept them, heaven and earth will not tolerate you. Another elder said. They had not handled their own affairs well, so they really had no energy to care about other people's affairs. Since old madam had driven them away, they certainly did not need to be polite. Where did father pick me up? Where did they lose the child? Qin Wanru ignored their words and still stared at Qin Huayong, as if she would not let go of Qin Huayong if he didn't give any evidence today. Her stubbornness made old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion even angrier. She banged on the table heavily and said, Second Miss Qin, I really shouldn't intervene in your affairs. But now you are in our mansion, not only do you not accept your biological parents, but you also interrogate your adoptive father. You are really unfilial. If Second Miss Qin has nothing else to say, please leave. Son, we are really your biological parents. The middle-aged woman let out a timely cry, just like a mother who had been rejected by a woman. Father, are you unwilling to say it or you can't say it? Qin Wanru ignored them. She wanted to force Qin Huayong to say it today. It was very chaotic at that time, and we didn't know when you disappeared. Son, we came to the capital city from thousands of miles away just to find you. For the sake of our hard work, please forgive our mistakes at that time. The middle-aged man also wiped his tears with his sleeves. Qin Huayong still did not say a word. He slowly lowered his head and looked very pale. No one would be in a good mood when his daughter who had been raised for so many years was taken away by her biological parents. If I am not your daughter, if I don't have the scars you mentioned, then you are pretending to be my biological parents. Looking at Qin Huayong's expression, Qin Wanru knew that she could not force him to say it for a while, so she turned to look at the middle-aged couple and said coldly. Send her directly to the government office. Pretending to be the royal relative is a serious crime. Rui, and great elder princess said coldly on the side. Old Madam of Duke Xing felt that Rui, and great elder princess was becoming more and more annoying. She kept saying that she was the royal relative. What kind of royal relative was Qin's mansion? She was really an idiot. Why did her son like this idiot's daughter at that time? Thinking of the woman who cursed her husband and daughter, she felt angry. If it were not for that woman, how could her son have an accident? How could the whereabouts of her biological granddaughter be unknown? Great elder princess, please send one person in to check with you and Madam of Duke Xing. If it is not her, please be a witness for me and send her to the government office. Qin Wanru continued Rui, and great elder princess words and looked at Madam of Duke Xing. It happened that they would also check Qin Yuru later. With her as a foreshadowing, Qin Yuru would have no reason to refuse. The timing was just right. Rui, and great elder princess nodded and waved to Nanny Gao beside her. Nanny Gao understood and stood beside Qin Wanru. Seeing that Rui, and great elder princess actually intervened to testify for Qin Wanru, Madam of Duke Xing suddenly had a bad feeling and was secretly vigilant. What she was most afraid of now was that Rui, and great elder princess had a relationship with Qin Wanru. She twisted the handkerchief in her hand into a ball fiercely. Chapter 428. The people who checked came out of the wing room after a while. Nanny Sheng, who was walking in front, felt her legs were floating. Until now, she still did not understand why the scar, which was said to be very serious, was not there. Madame D's servants had repeatedly said that the scar was definitely there. Even if so many years had passed, it would not fade. However, when Nanny Sheng saw the pair of white, tender, and clean legs, she still couldn't find the so-called scar. How could it be possible? Everyone's eyes fell on them when they saw them enter. Is there any injury? Ruyan Great Elder Princess asked slowly. Nanny Gao stepped forward and said, reporting to Great Elder Princess, there is no scar as these two people said. Second Miss Qin has nothing to do with them. Nanny Gao stepped forward and reported. Nanny Sheng looked at her master's pale face and stood behind her without saying a word. It was unwise to stand out at this time. That's great. Since it is a mistake, let's drive them away. I don't know where they came from. They even recognized the wrong person. Madame of Duke Xing adjusted her mentality and knew that it was impossible to frame Qin Wanru at this time. Since the general trend had gone, she naturally showed that she was on Qin Wanru's side. But her words seemed to be just a small misunderstanding. The middle-aged couple also panicked at this time. After looking at each other, they immediately retreated happily. Yes, we mistook the wrong person. We will go right now, right now. The middle-aged woman smiled dryly and pulled the middle-aged man to retreat. Seeing that they were about to leave the flower hall, Madame of Duke Xing breathed a sigh of relief. It was the best way to solve the problem in this way. Like Nanny Sheng, she felt that it was incredible that the scar on Qin Wanru's knee disappeared, but this was not the time to discuss this. Old Madame Qin wanted to step forward to stop them, but was stopped by Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru gently touched the back of Madame Dowager's hand, indicating that she should not act rashly. The identities of the people present were not simple, and old Madame Qin could not stop them. Come on, stop them. Rui and Great Elder Princess banged her hand on the table heavily. Immediately, two old maids of Great Elder Princess stopped her at the door. Old Madam, the entrance control of your Duke Xing's mansion is really different from that of other places. A man and a woman who come out of nowhere can enter our mansion to frame a miss from an aristocratic family who comes to your mansion as a guest and force this miss to have a blood test. If someone rushes to the door and says that the first miss of your mansion is not Duke Xing's biological daughter, will you also have to drip a blood test on the spot? Ruyan Great Elder Princess sneered, with a cruel sneer on her lips. Seeing Madame of Duke Xing's fake actions just now and old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion pretending to be deaf and dumb, Rui and Great Elder Princess thought of her daughter, who had also suffered such grievances in Duke Xing's mansion and was suppressed to the point that she couldn't speak. Now her granddaughter suffered the same harsh treatment. How could Rui and Great Elder Princess not be angry? It was said that the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion had always been favored in the mansion, but her granddaughter was so abused. In terms of status, the status of the first miss was not as high as that of her granddaughter. First Princess, please mind your words. Hearing Rui and Great Elder Princess talk about her proudest granddaughter in such a scornful tone, old Madam was a little annoyed and retorted coldly. Although Great Elder Princess had a noble status, she was just an empty shell. Mind my words. But did you mind your words just now? You forced a good little girl to have a blood test on the spot. Those who don't know might think that your mansion can't bear to see this little girl living a good life and specially found someone to abuse her. Otherwise, how could she enter the gate of your Duke Xing's mansion? It's so easy to enter the gate of your mansion that even cats and dogs can enter. Rui and Great Elder Princess sneered, and her eyes became sharper. Tie these two people up and send them to the government. Yes. Another two old maids went over to pull them up. Seeing the two aggressive old maids coming over, the middle-aged couple panicked. When they wanted to say something, they saw the two old maids grab one person each and directly twist their arms. Great Elder Princess, this is Duke Xing's mansion, isn't it? Old Madame of Duke Yang's mansion coughed in a low voice and said uncomfortably. She was reminding Rui and Great Elder Princess that she could not do this kind of thing on behalf of her master. Did you plan this? Rui and Great Elder Princess asked with a gloomy face. Old Madam of Duke Yong's mansion was startled and hurriedly shook her hands. This has nothing to do with me. Just have a look. Since it has nothing to do with you, shut up. It's between me and Duke Xing's mansion, and I don't need others to intervene. Rui and Great Elder Princess shouted sternly. She didn't leave any face for old Madam of Duke Yong's mansion. Being scolded in front of so many people, old Madam of Duke Yong's mansion looked very embarrassed. But she also knew that Rui and Great Elder Princess had never been easy to deal with. In addition, Duke Xing's mansion was really in the wrong. Being scolded, her face turned blue and white, but she couldn't say a word. Great Elder Princess, these two people will naturally be sent to the government. Since Duke Xing's mansion was mentioned, Madam of Duke Xing had to come forward with a smile. Now she just wanted to send Rui and Great Elder Princess, the plague, away. Madam of Duke Xing is a straightforward person. Then please send them away. Rui and Great Elder Princess waved her hand, and several old maids stepped back. Seeing that no one caught them, the middle-aged couple turned around to escape. Madam of Duke Xing waved her hand helplessly, and several old maids of Duke Xing's mansion rushed up, also caught them, and then pushed them away. According to Rui and Great Elder Princess's order, they should be sent to the government. She had to send them away, because Rui and Great Elder Princess was still sitting here. Great Elder Princess, you see, this matter has been settled. Second Miss Qin didn't suffer any loss. Seeing that they were pushed away, Madam of Duke Xing said with a smile. Of course, it meant that since there was nothing wrong, Rui and Great Elder Princess could leave. Is it all right? Rui and Great Elder Princess's eyes were very cold, which made Madam of Duke Xing feel very uncomfortable. But she couldn't avoid it, so she could only say with a smile, yes, it's all right. What about her? Didn't you say that she pretended to be the royal relative? Rui and Great Elder Princess stretched out her hand and said directly to Qin Yuru. Madam of Duke Xing's face froze, and she almost squeezed out a smile. This matter, we should consider it at length. Now she just wanted Rui and Great Elder Princess to leave. Consider it at length? How? Next time try to put my son-in-law's name under her name? Or do you think that she is my granddaughter, so you recognize her again and again? Rui and Great Elder Princess didn't beat around the bush at this time, and said coldly and straightforwardly. How could she be the granddaughter of Great Elder Princess? Let's just recognize her as a foster relative. Madam of Duke Xing was a little flustered and subconsciously looked at Old Madam. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion coughed in a low voice, hid the disgust in her eyes, and took over the topic. I just have a predestined relationship with First Miss Qin, but Great Elder Princess is concerned about me. Since Great Elder Princess doesn't like to put my name under the name of the eldest, then let's put her under the name of the second. Old Madam of Duke Xing and Madam of Duke Xing had the same idea. They just wanted to send Rui and Great Elder Princess away. Anyway, they didn't say anything, and they just wanted to recognize her as a foster relative. Rui and Great Elder Princess couldn't control so much. Qin Yuru, who stood aside, breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Rui and Great Elder Princess didn't meddle in this matter, it would be fine. Qin Wanru glanced at her and sneered in her heart. Since Rui and Great Elder Princess had come, she naturally wouldn't leave like this. Moreover, there was another person who wouldn't let Qin Yuru get what she wanted. This matter has nothing to do with me. Rui and Great Elder Princess asked coldly. Of course it has nothing to do with Great Elder Princess. Old Madam of Duke Xing glanced at her and said indifferently. She didn't believe that Rui and Great Elder Princess could find out anything. Come on, find out whether First Miss Qin has my daughter's seal on her. Rui and Great Elder Princess's eyes fell on Qin Yuru, and Qin Yuru couldn't help lowering her head. Suddenly hearing Rui and great elder princess's words, Qin Yuru suddenly raised her head, and her expression seemed to be happy but not happy, and she was extremely shocked. Seeing two servant girls of Princess Mansion coming over, Qin Huayong hurriedly stepped forward to protect Qin Yuru. Great elder princess, what do you mean? Qin Wanru glanced at Qin Huayong indifferently, and her gorgeous cherry lips curled up. It was really different to be a biological child and not. Just now such a big battle, but he didn't help her at all. She felt a little pain in her heart, but her eyes became colder. Because she had guessed some things early. I suspect that your daughter stole my daughter's seal. Rui and Great Elder Princess said overbearingly. Great Elder Princess, my daughter has been in the boudoir for a long time, and she has never seen Infanta Qinghua. Moreover, I heard that Infanta Qinghua had died a long time ago. How could she steal Infanta Qinghua's seal? Qin Huayong explained helplessly. Rui and Great Elder Princess sneered and said angrily, just now an ordinary couple wanted to investigate second Miss Qin, and General Qin didn't stop them. Now I want to investigate first Miss Qin, and General Qin stepped forward to stop me. Am I not as good as an ordinary couple? Combined with what had happened just now, what she said was very reasonable. Or does General Qin think that first Miss Qin really stole my daughter's seal, and dare not let me investigate? Rui and Great Elder Princess sneered and continued. If he didn't investigate, it would be suspicious. Her meaning was exactly the same as when she forced Qin Wanru to investigate. Great Elder Princess, this is not very good. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion advised. Why didn't your mansion think it was not very good just now? Why did you force second Miss Qin like this? Is it because she has no parents that she is so despised by you? Now it is first Miss Qin, and you all jump out to say it is not very good. Rui and Great Elder Princess came here today to make trouble. Even if old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion didn't find her, she would find her. After saying that, she clapped her hands, and two old maids came to Qin Yuru and said respectfully, First Miss, please. They meant to take her to the wing room on the side for investigation. With the previous example of Qin Wanru, no one could say that it should not be done. At this time, several clan elders had completely lost their ideas. After looking at each other, they waited for the final answer of the matter. Today's matter didn't seem to be good in any way. Chapter 429. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion trusted Qin Yuru very much and wanted to be close to her. In addition, Qin Yuru wore clothes with bluegrass patterns and it was very easy to make a bluegrass seal. Qin Wanru was sure that Qin Yuru must have a bluegrass seal on her. A fake bluegrass seal. Both Qin Yuru and Duke Xing's mansion said that they just wanted to recognize their daughter, and Rui and Great Elder Princess had nothing to do with it. In this case, she would find the evidence from Qin Yuru. The bluegrass seal belonged to her biological mother, Infanta Qinghua. Since Qin Yuru had it, she must have something to do with Infanta Qinghua. Duke Xing's mansion naturally did not want Qin Yuru to take out this seal. But what about Qin Yuru? She must be willing to have something to do with Rui and Great Elder Princess and would even take the initiative to find it out. An adopted granddaughter could not satisfy Qin Yuru. In Qin Wanru's eyes, Qin Yuru's behavior was clearly willing when she went down, and she even walked faster than usual, with a somewhat impatient look, which further verified Qin Wanru's speculation. She pulled the carrot out of the pit step by step. Qin Yuru left quickly and came back quickly. After a while, she came back with the old maid. Great Elder Princess, there is really the Infanta's seal. The old maid in the front held a seal in her hand and presented it excitedly. Old Madam Qin looked at Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru bit her pink cherry lips and shook her head gently. Old Madam Qin took a deep breath. Others might not know, but she knew the inside story. The more she saw today, the sadder she was, not only for her granddaughter but also for her son. If Qin Wanru had not held her from time to time, she would not have been able to bear it at that moment. It was just a guess before, but now it was confirmed that Madame D and her daughter really had bad intentions. They wanted to impersonate the identity of the little granddaughter, and the identity of the little granddaughter was indeed the biological daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing and the biological granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess. Old Madame Qin closed her eyes and suppressed the bitterness in her heart. She was not too surprised by what Madame D and her daughter did. Madame D and her daughter had always been greedy and selfish, but what about Qin Huayong? Just now, he clearly knew that this middle-aged couple was not Zhuozhuo's biological parents, but he did not tell the truth. Others might not know what happened back then, but how could he not know? Who entrusted Zhuozhuo to him? He even knew the details of what happened that year better than himself. But just now, he didn't say a word, let the couple shout to ruin Zhuozhuo's reputation, and didn't even defend the injury on Zhuozhuo's knee. Qin Wanru did have a serious injury on her knee. When Qin Wanru was raised in the mansion for the first time, Qin Yuru was angry that someone else shared her love after she came back, so she deliberately pushed Qin Wanru from behind and fell. It was not because she fell early in the chaos of war. Grandma. Qin Wanru seemed to sense the mixed feelings in the old lady's heart. She whispered softly and looked at old Madame Qin's face with concern. Old Madame Qin shook her head silently and smiled bitterly. She reached out to pat Qin Wanru's arm, which was supporting her, and then turned to look at Qin Yuru. Qin Yuru's face was full of joy and uncontrollable excitement. It turned out that this seal belonged to Infanta Qinghua. The meaning of the nominal granddaughter of Duke Xing's mansion and the biological granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess was completely different. Seeing the seal, old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion looked terrible, while Rui, and great elder princess looked slightly excited. After taking the seal and looking at it carefully, she raised her eyes to look at Qin Yuru and asked, "This is your seal? Where did you get it?" Reporting to great elder princess, "This is indeed my seal. I don't know where I got it, but I have had it with me since I was a child," Qin Yuru said softly. She had it with her since she was a child. Qin Wanru sneered in her heart. The seal in the hands of Rui, and great elder princess was exactly the same as the one hanging around her neck. It could be seen that Madame D had this intention and held the seal in her hands for a long time. After she asked Chu Luqian to steal it, she carved another one. When she was in Jiangzhou, Madame D tried every means to take Chu Lu as Qin Yuru's servant girl. With this seal in front of her, she could be sure that Madame D had this intention for a long time, but she didn't take it seriously because she didn't know her real identity at that time. But then she gradually guessed her identity, and then Qin Yuru impersonated her. Are you my son's biological daughter?" Rui, and great elder princess clenched the seal in her hand into a fist and looked more and more solemn. I don't know. I just know that this seal has been with me since I was a child." Qin Yuru lowered her head and rubbed her handkerchief as if she was at a loss. At this time, she was happy in her heart, but she couldn't show it on her face. She could only rub her handkerchief to suppress the joy in her heart. She was about to become the granddaughter of Rui, and great elder princess. "Have you shown it to old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion?" Rui, and great elder princess looked gentle. Hearing this, old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion changed her face and said hurriedly, "Great elder princess, old Madame, I'm asking about our Qinghua. You'd better not disturb me." Rui, and great elder princess interrupted old Madame's words rudely. Her slightly cold face slid from old Madame's face to Madame of Duke Xing's face. "If I find anyone deliberately obstructing me from recognizing my biological granddaughter, I will not spare her." Seeing Rui, and great elder princess's strong behavior, Qin Yuru breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. As long as great elder princess recognized her, nothing would be a problem. Even if there were some small omissions, great elder princess would definitely help her settle it. Thinking of this, she became more and more excited. If she became the biological granddaughter of great elder princess and the legitimate miss of Duke Xing's mansion, no one would dare to look down on her in the future. Not to mention that Qi Rongji would be trampled by her. Even if Qin Wanru knew her identity and wanted to jump out to claim her as her relative, it would be too late. After she recognized Rui and Great Elder Princess, she would never let Qin Wanru stay. Great Elder Princess, Old Madam has seen this seal. Old Madam asked me before. After I showed it to her, Old Madam liked me very much. Qin Yuru said. There were many meanings in her words. On the one hand, it meant that Old Madam knew her identity and had specially verified it. On the other hand, it meant that Old Madam had confirmed her identity, so she would recognize her as her biological granddaughter today. This was probably just a formality for them to recognize each other. Old Madam has seen this seal and verified it. Does it mean that she is the biological daughter of my son? Rui and Great Elder Princess had been waiting for this sentence. With Qin Yuru's words, she could directly find Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. Holding the seal, she turned to Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion and said, Great Elder Princess. Old Madam didn't know what to say at the moment. Madam of Duke Xing laughed and wanted to help her out. It has nothing to do with you. I want to have a good talk with your mother-in-law. Rui and Great Elder Princess rudely interrupted Madam of Duke Xing and stared at Old Madam. Old Madam, since you have seen the seal and know that it is my son's, you must recognize first Miss Qin because of this, right? With Qin Yuru's words, Old Madam had to admit it even if she wanted to. She secretly hated Qin Yuru for being so ignorant. How could she tell this to Rui and Great Elder Princess? But now she had to respond. She coughed in a low voice and said slowly, I do guess that she may be the daughter of my eldest brother and Infanta Qinghua, but I am not sure. So I want to try to recognize her as a foster relative first. At this time, she felt lucky that she had listened to Madam of Duke Xing's words and did not directly recognize Qin Yuru. Otherwise, it would be difficult for her to answer Rui and Great Elder Princess today. Try to recognize her as a foster relative first. Old Madam, my son is the Infanta conferred by the royal family. How can her daughter recognize her? Rui and Great Elder Princess banged her hand on the table heavily. Old Madam, don't you know the consequences of mixing up the royal bloodline? Great Elder Princess, as I said, I just want to recognize her as a foster relative. I don't really believe that she is the daughter of Infanta Qinghua. None of us knows what happened in those years. Old Madam also showed a strong sense of sadness on her face and said with an unkind look. You want to recognize my son as a foster relative? After seeing the seal, you directly recognize her as a foster relative without asking. Old Madam, do all the people in your Duke Xing's mansion do things so arbitrarily? Rui and Great Elder Princess glanced at Old Madam with a trace of coldness in her eyes. Seeing Infanta Qinghua's seal, it was really rash to accept her without asking. Old Madam was speechless for a while. After thinking for a while, she could only make an excuse, this matter can't be investigated in a day or two. Let's accept her first, and then slowly investigate. Old Madam was speechless. Old Madam, have you investigated? Rui and Great Elder Princess did not relax and said. I am investigating. Old Madam said. How is the investigation going? Who did you send to investigate? How long did they go to Jiangzhou? Rui and Great Elder Princess was aggressive. If she wanted to investigate Qin Yuru's background, she naturally had to go to Jiangzhou and even had to investigate carefully from the root. After this matter is settled, I will send someone to investigate. Old Madam could not say that she had not thought about this matter at all. If not, what should I do? Let her occupy my son's name. Rui and Great Elder Princess continued to ask. It was more and more difficult to answer this question. At this time, Old Madam felt lucky that she had not formally recognized Qin Yuru. She actually wanted Madam of Duke Xing to recognize Qin Yuru at the beginning. But since Duke Xing believed that Qin Yuru was the daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing, naturally, she should be recognized under the name of the former heir of Duke Xing. This was why Old Madam wanted to recognize her as a foster granddaughter. Only old madam had the right to recognize her foster granddaughter and record her under the name of her deceased eldest son. Before, old madam had always thought that this method was good. But now, as Rui and great elder princess kept asking, she suddenly felt that this method was not good at all. Wasn't it obvious to attract Rui and great elder princess's attention? If not, she naturally can't be the daughter of Infanta Qinghua. But I like this first Miss Qin, so it is right to recognize her as a foster granddaughter. My eldest son is my son. If I want to record her under his name, then I will record her under his name. Being repeatedly questioned by Rui and great elder princess in front of so many people, old madam could not keep her face. She sneered and her attitude became arrogant. In the past, no matter in the Shao clan or in Duke Xing's mansion, old madam always had the final say. She never thought that one day she would be humiliated by Rui and great elder princess. Chapter 430. Infanta Qinghua is my son's daughter-in-law. How can you put her under the name of Infanta Qinghua without informing us? At this time, old madam of Duke Xing's mansion also became angry and felt humiliated. In addition, she didn't like Qin Wanru at all, so she immediately fought back unceremoniously. Marriage was naturally based on the husband's family. How could she directly put the bride under the name of a woman without informing her husband's family? Even if it was brought to the imperial palace, it would be on her side. Then I inform you now that I want to recognize second Miss Qin. I don't like the first Miss of Qin's mansion, so you don't have to recognize her. It seemed that Rui and great elder princess really had a conflict with old madam. The overbearing meaning in her words almost made old madam faint. She pointed at Qin Yuru and then pointed at Qin Wanru with trembling fingers. She managed to catch her breath and said angrily, "Great elder princess, first Miss Qin has the seal of Infanta Qinghua in her hand, but second Miss Qin is rude, greedy and disrespectful to elders." Originally, old madam didn't want to say this. At this time, she was angry with Rui and great elder princess. She only felt that Rui and great elder princess was an old fool who pestered endlessly. She hated her so much that she blurted out these words. Old madam hates second Miss Qin. Of course not. If second Miss Qin also takes out a seal, will old madam also dislike her? No matter what, I won't like her. Old madam was angry with Rui and great elder princess. What did she mean by Qin Wanru also took out a seal? Was there a lot of such seals? That was how these words came out. Qin Wanru looked down at the ground in front of her, and her long fan-like eyelashes fluttered. She remained calm, as if they were not talking about her. Qin Yuru's face showed pride. Even if Qin Wanru was really the daughter of Infanta Qinghua, so what? Old madam didn't like her at all. This was more beneficial to Qin Yuru, at least it could make old madam believe in protecting her. Qi Rongji frowned and looked at this and that, feeling suspicious. She was also shocked and shocked. She was also familiar with Qin Yuru's bluegrass seal. At that time, she found the pattern from Qin Wanru and imprinted it on her dress. After that, they came to Duke Xing's mansion as guests. Qin Yuru was Qin Huayong's biological daughter, but Qin Wanru was not. Qin Yuru was Qin Huayong's daughter, but Qin Wanru was. Qin Yuru had a seal, so Qin Wanru might have one too. With these points, Qin Yuru, Qin Huayong of Qin Huayong's mansion. And Qin, Qin's Qin, Qin, Ru, Huayong, Qin, Ru, and Qin, and Qin, Ru, Qin Xing, Rong, Qin, Hua, Qin, Yong, Qin, Madam. Qin, 1, Madam, Qin, Yong, Madam. Her speculation made Qi Rongji change her face and cold sweat appeared on her forehead. Qin Yuru was impersonating Madam D. Sure enough, she changed her age and hinted that she was not Madam D's biological daughter. She had a purpose. Qi Rongji stirred the handkerchief in her hand fiercely. She didn't know whose side she should stand on. Should she help Qin Yuru or Qin Wanru? Comparing the two, Qi Rongji immediately made a decision. She would help Qin Yuru. She could use this to blackmail Qin Yuru in the future, which would be more beneficial to her. Thinking of this, Qi Rongji moved closer to Qin Yuru. She had to find time to make a deal with Qin Yuru. Although Qin Wanru's eyes were on the ground, she saw Qi Rongji's movement. A trace of serenity flashed across her watery eyes, and she narrowed her eyes slightly. She knew exactly what Qi Rongji wanted to do. She wanted to help Qin Yuru to deal with her. A cold smile silently appeared on her lips. She had no chance now. Old madam, you will hate second Miss Qin no matter what? Ruyan Great Elder Princess asked again. Yes, I will hate second Miss Qin no matter what. Being pressed by Ruyan Great Elder Princess again and again, old madam was already full of anger. She answered without hesitation. Madam of Duke Xing, who was standing aside, had a bad feeling. But at this time, Ruyan Great Elder Princess and old madam were talking, so it was not her place to interrupt. Old madam, are you sure that first Miss Qin is the biological daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing? Ruyan Great Elder Princess suddenly changed the topic and brought it back. Yes, she is the biological daughter of the first heir of Duke Xing. If you don't admit it, I will. Old madam was full of worries, which were all aroused by Ruyan Great Elder Princess. At this time, when she heard the question, she said what was in her heart. When she finished saying it, she found it was not good. But she couldn't take it back after saying it. For a moment, the whole room was shocked. Several elders looked at old madam in horror. Nominal granddaughter and biological granddaughter were completely different. Did old madam believe that first Miss Qin was the biological daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing? Qin Yuru looked at old madam with great joy and almost rushed to kneel and kowtow. Qi Rongji stood still and became suspicious. She was not ecstatic Qin Yuru. She had an intuition that there was something wrong. After thinking for a while, she decided to wait and see. She is Qinghua's biological daughter. Ruyan Great Elder Princess asked coldly. Great Elder Princess, have you seen this seal clearly? Since she had said it, old madam did not hide it anymore. She frowned and asked. Just based on a seal? Ruyan Great Elder Princess sneered. Of course not. I've inquired about it. Madam D doesn't treat her well. When she came to Duke Xing's mansion before, her body was covered with bruises. Which biological mother would treat her daughter like this? And her? Old madam said and looked at Qi Rongji with a gloomy face. She originally wanted to say Qin Yuru's age, but Qi Rongji just proved that what Qin Yuru said was false. For a moment, old madam hesitated and couldn't continue. What else? Ruyan Great Elder Princess did not intend to let old madam go and continued to ask. Her age is also suitable. Old madam had to continue to say, but she didn't say Qin Yuru's real age. How old? The more she didn't want to say, the more Great Elder Princess pressed. 13 years old. Old madam was a little regretful. She felt that she was not so sure now. Madam of Duke Xing's face became very ugly. She wanted to open her mouth to stop old madam from saying this, but it was too late. She could only stand aside and watch quietly. Suddenly, she felt that something was wrong. Qin Wanru smiled. Her smile was like a gorgeous flower, and her watery eyes were unparalleled. Between the question and the answer, the information that old madam and Madam of Duke Xing wanted to hide was undoubtedly exposed. Then, even if they made excuses, they could no longer tactfully say that they knew nothing. Ruyan Great Elder Princess could also directly intervene according to old madam's words. What old madam meant just now was that Qin Yuru was the biological daughter of Infanta Qinghua and the blood of the former heir of Duke Xing. It was much easier to deal with than evasively saying that they just recognized Qin Yuru as their nominal relative. Great Elder Princess, I also have this seal. She raised her head and looked at Ruyan Great Elder Princess with her clear watery eyes. She moved to one side and Yujia immediately stepped forward to block everyone's eyes. Qin Wanru took a hanging rope from her neck and then took it down. Everyone's eyes flashed over and saw a seal hanging on the hanging rope. Some people nearby immediately saw that it was also a seal of bluegrass. Madame of Duke Xing's hands and feet were cold and her body was stiff. She turned back with difficulty and stared at Qin Yuru fiercely. She staggered and almost fell. Nanny Sheng hurriedly reached out to help her. When she stood still again, Madame of Duke Xing tightly pursed her lips and gradually restrained her eyes. In the end, she was as calm as water. If people didn't see the scene just now, they would really think that Madame of Duke Xing had always been so calm. Qin Wanru caught a glimpse of the brief scene from the corner of her eyes, and it was very clear. She also saw that the other person was temporarily absent-minded like Madame of Duke Xing, but she still recovered at this time. It was Qin Huayong. There were many people in this flower hall who schemed against each other. 2 seals fell into the hands of Ruyan Great Elder Princess. Great Elder Princess, the seal of second Miss Qin belongs to Infanta. When she was young, Infanta fell here and lost a small corner. Nanny Gao reached out to point at the corner of the seal that Qin Wanru took out and said. There was a small gap there and it was not clear. If Great Elder Princess didn't happen to turn over to that side, she really couldn't see it. Where did you get this seal? Ruyan Great Elder Princess looked up at Qin Yuru and said sternly. She stretched out the previous seal in her hand and said, this one is fake. Qin Yuru panicked. She, who was about to become a noble lady in the capital city, actually leaked the truth because of a seal. I don't know. This seal has always been with me. At this time, she could only insist that she didn't know. How old are you, first Miss Qin? Who can prove that you are not the daughter of Madame D? If you are not the daughter of Madame D, who are your biological parents? Ruyan Great Elder Princess's eyes became more and more gloomy. Thinking that her daughter was dead and was used by someone with evil intentions, she was heartbroken. Her daughter had been used to the point where she wouldn't even let go of her life. Qi Rongji moved slightly and moved towards Qin Wanru. I really don't know anything, and no one told me this. Qin Yuru's face turned red and she hurriedly defended herself. Her eyes glanced helplessly at the crowd and finally fell on Qin Huayong's face. She immediately lost control and burst into tears. Father, I didn't say that my mother was not my biological mother, nor did I say that I was the daughter of Infanta Qinghua. I just have this seal on me. I really don't know anything. At this time, she was glad that she didn't say anything before. She felt that at this time, even if she failed, she would not be blamed. The most unexpected thing was that Qin Wanru also had this seal. If she had known that Qin Wanru had such a seal, she would have tried to grab it at the beginning. Chapter 431. He said it with certainty, but everyone was dubious. When Qin Wanru's affairs came out, Qin Huayong also said it with certainty, but Qin Wanru was not Qin Huayong's biological daughter in the end. Could it be that he meant the same thing now? Did he say it in order to protect his daughter? So this proof had no ability to prove. First Miss Qin, I heard that you also changed your age in Jiangzhou, from 15 years old to 13 years old. Nanny Gao spoke for Rui, and Great Elder Princess. After speaking, she did not wait for Qin Yuru's explanation and looked at Qi Rongji beside Qin Wanru. First Miss Qi, where is your previous evidence? This was what Rui, and Great Elder Princess was investigating before she came. How could Rui and Great Elder Princess know? Qi Rongji was full of doubts, but she did not dare to disobey. Against Great Elder Princess's order, she nodded and called over the supervisor who was the witness. She said to Nanny Gao with a smile, this is the supervisor who was the witness at that time. He has a copy of the changed household registration certificate in his hand. Qi Rongji pointed at the servant girl Xixiang. She can prove that Qin Yuru is 15 years old now, and she married my brother because of the age. Seeing the scene that Qin Yuru was exposed just now, and thinking that the evidence in her hand had been released, Qi Rongji now showed that she had drawn a clear line with Qin Yuru. Qi Rongji, you are slandering me. Qin Yuru was so angry that her face turned red. She wiped the tears on her face and said angrily, holding the handkerchief in her hand and trembling uncontrollably. Qin Huayong's eyes fell on her face, and his frown showed that he was in a bad mood. It seemed that he was struggling with the situation in front of him, and more obviously, he showed that he knew nothing about it. Whether it is slandering you or not, there is a public opinion. Qin Yuru, I didn't expect that you wanted to pretend to be Wanru's sister and abandon her. No wonder when in Jiangzhou, you and your mother tried so hard to hurt Wanru and even let people take her away. You are so vicious. Qi Rongji pointed at Qin Yuru and scolded with righteousness. Now she was on the side of justice. Great Elder Princess, did you also choose Qin Wanru based on this? Old Madam said in an unkind tone. She had been humiliated by Rui and Great Elder Princess again and again. In addition, Rui and Great Elder Princess even regarded Qin Wanru, whom she hated most, as Qinghua's daughter. She was so angry that she burst out. Even if Qin Yuru was not, it should not be Qin Wanru. It seems that old madam really hates Wanru. Rui and Great Elder Princess asked again with a cold face. This time, she didn't wait for old madam's answer and ordered Nanny Gao, bring her here. Yes. Nanny Gao responded and made a gesture to the old maid at the door. The old maid understood and went outside to lead a middle-aged man in. After seeing the man's face clearly, Madame of Duke Xing took a step back, her face as pale as snow, and her fingers trembled slightly. Greetings, old madam. Xiao Huai stepped forward and knelt down in front of Madame Dowager. He said in a trembling voice. After leaving the mansion for many years, he still felt indebted to his former master. You are Xiao Huai. Old madam suddenly stood up and trembled with excitement. This was her son's man. Back then, she had asked him to find her son. After so many years, there had been no news. She thought that he had also died in the war. Unexpectedly, she saw him appear in front of her alive and well. Yes, old madam. I am Xiao Huai. Thinking that his master had died, Xiao Huai said sadly. You found your master. Old madam was very excited and asked eagerly. Her eldest son was her pride. How could she not be ecstatic? Master has died in the war. Xiao Huai burst into tears. For so many years, he had been looking for the former heir. Later, he found that the former heir had a daughter and had been looking for the little miss. However, he had missed the little miss again and again. Thinking of the accident so many years ago, how could he not be sad? Old madam's legs went soft. She guessed it was one thing, but she really heard it. Nanny Yu hurriedly reached out to support her. Is it really gone? Old madam took a breath, and her eyes turned red. She choked. It's really gone, but the little miss is here. I found the little miss. She is the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion. She is the biological daughter of the former heir and the infanta. Xiao Huai wiped his tears and pointed at Qin Wanru. Old madam, I have found out that second Miss Qin was entrusted to Ningyuan Army General by the former heir before he died. Qin Huayong's fingers twitched in his sleeves. Ningyuan Army General, what's going on? Old madam wiped her tears and looked at Qin Huayong. Since he came in today, he had said very little. Although the matter was closely related to his two daughters, he seemed to be more like a bystander. Hearing old madam's question, Qin Huayong frowned more and seemed to be hesitating. Tell me. Old Madam Qin said slowly. Yes, mother. Qin Huayong answered, and then slowly told what had happened at that time. He didn't know who Qin Wanru's biological father was. During the war, there were generals who were transferred to the Qin's mansion. There were also generals who were temporarily promoted because of the death of high-ranking generals. There was a deputy general who lived in the Qin's mansion with a pregnant woman and a well-behaved daughter. After that, the woman and the daughter were separated, and only the daughter was saved. Because there was no one to take care of the daughter, he asked old Madame Qin to take care of the daughter. After that, Qin Wanru's biological father died in the war and asked him to take care of the daughter. Qin Huaiyong also promised to take care of Qin Wanru as his biological daughter, and didn't say anything else. Although Qin Wanru knew this, when she heard Qin Huaiyong's words, her eyes still turned red. Some vague parts in her memory seemed to become clear all of a sudden, but when she wanted to catch them again, she found that she couldn't catch the disappearing fragments, and her head was dull and painful. I still have the glazed cup left by my mother. Grandmother put it away for me. Madame D and Big Sister kept asking grandmother for the glazed cup, but she didn't give it to them. Qin Wanru said slowly with cold eyes. Qin Yu came in and respectfully presented a box to Rui, and Great Elder Princess. Rui and Great Elder Princess opened the box with trembling hands, and the Fenghua glazed cup inside appeared in front of everyone. Old Madam, when I was in Jiangzhou, I visited several old people who were related to the former heir in the army at that time. They all said that they had seen the former heir and said that the former heir was with the former heir's wife at that time. Little Miss had been born, and the former heir's wife was pregnant with the former heir. Xiao Huai took out a letter from his arms and handed it to old Madam. This was some materials he found in Jiangzhou, and some testimonies of some witnesses. In his eyes, the former heir's son was certainly the former heir's son. Old Madam, you still can't see that the first miss of Qin's mansion is hiding evil intentions. She wants to pretend to be a relative of the emperor and pretend to be my daughter. Rui and Great Elder Princess raised her head, looked at old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion coldly and said. The facts were there, and there was no room for quibbling. It was a fact that Qin Wanru was the daughter of the heir of Duke Xing and Infanta Qinghua. They couldn't find him before because they didn't know where he was. But now, since some old people knew it, they should be able to find out if they investigated again. Even if the former heir changed his surname, it was easy to find out as long as he told them his characteristics. Qin Yuru is hiding evil intentions. She must have known the origin of Sister Wanru, so she deliberately changed her age and made a fake bluegrass seal. Her purpose was to pretend to be Sister Wanru and become the legitimate daughter of Duke Xing's mansion and the biological granddaughter of Great Elder Princess. She is so vicious. Qi Rongji rolled her eyes and immediately shouted angrily. I'm innocent, I'm innocent. I really don't know anything. I don't know when this seal was put on me, and I don't know why I changed my age. Mother said so. She told me that if I was young, the things in Jiangzhou would fade away and no one would mention it. Mother just didn't want me to be gossiped about. Qin Yuru cried in panic. Compared with pretending to be a relative of the emperor, the crime of changing her age was much smaller. Balancing the two, she immediately shouted that she was innocent. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion sat heavily in the chair, stared at Qin Yuru's face blankly, and then slowly turned to Qin Wanru's face. At this time, of course, she knew that she was wrong. But why was Qin Yuru, who she liked, not her biological granddaughter, but this annoying Qin Wanru, her biological granddaughter? Sure enough, Qin Wanru took after Infanta Qinghua and made her feel disgusted at first sight. Although she had recognized Qin Wanru as her biological granddaughter, old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion still didn't like her. Not only did she not like her, but she also deeply disliked her and vented her anger. She even felt that all this was calculated by Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru had the seal of the orchid but didn't show it to her. Qin Wanru had the Fenghua glazed cup but only gave it to Rui, and Great Elder Princess. She even sent a servant to Rui, and Great Elder Princess. Qin Wanru was indeed Qin Wanru's biological granddaughter, who was born to be incompatible with her. Qin Yuru, don't pretend. How could you not know? If you didn't know, why would Madame D spend so much effort to print the orchid pattern on your clothes to attract the attention of Duke Xing's mansion? If you didn't know, why did you say that old madam liked you after you showed the seal to her? Qi Rongji now stood by Qin Wanru's side to please Rui, and great elder princess. Seeing that Qin Yuru was still arguing, she immediately scolded her loudly. Although she didn't know the cause and effect before, she was not stupid. At this time, she thought about it carefully and thought of many suspicious points. Qin Yuru, don't think that it is perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect wall in the world. You even dared to pretend to be Sister Wanru to seduce Prince Cheng. Didn't you think that if you really replaced Sister Wanru, Prince Cheng would be your uncle? Qi Rongji was very clear at this time. Before she left the mansion, she had heard the rumors about Qin Yuru in Prince Cheng's mansion. She had also thought that this matter could be used to her. At this time, she used it to slap Qin Yuru's face, which was both ruthless and accurate. Chapter 432. If they really believed that Qin Yuru was the daughter of Infanta Qinghua and the former heir of Duke Xing, they could dissociate her from hooking up with Prince Cheng. But if they looked at it from another perspective, they would say that she had messed up the social order. At that time, not only Qin Yuru, but also Infanta Qinghua and the former heir of Duke Xing would be disgraced. Thinking of this, both of them could not sit still. General Qin, what should we do? Ruyan Great Elder Princess asked first. Qin Huayong frowned. Now the matter was almost clear, and he was more and more disappointed with his daughter. He walked to Qin Yuru in a few steps and shouted, "Kneel down and apologize to your second sister." "Father!" Qin Yuru raised her head in disbelief and screamed. "Kneel down." Qin Huayong's face became more and more fierce, with a sense of coldness. No matter how unwilling Qin Yuru was, she had no choice but to kneel down in front of Qin Wanru and cry, second sister, I really don't know anything. It's mother's idea." Now she could only push all the blame to Madame D. Old Madame of Duke Yong's fingers trembled, but she did not dare to say anything. No matter how she looked at it, it was Madame D and her daughter's plot. Now that things had come to this point, someone had to take the responsibility. Although she felt sorry for her daughter, she also felt sorry for her granddaughter. Her daughter had confidently said that she would succeed in this matter, but now she had shot herself in the foot. She had no choice but to save as many people as she could. Her daughter couldn't get up from her current state. She had to choose the lesser of two evils. Now she could only acquiesce in this matter. Her daughter was doomed. Qin Wanru stepped aside to avoid Qin Yuru's kneeling. Anyway, Qin Yuru was still her eldest sister. Moreover, Qin's mansion had raised her for so many years. Even if she did not make any contribution, she had done hard work. If she insisted on pursuing it, it would only make people think that she was ungrateful. Qin Yuru was basically finished now, but she didn't want her to be finished. In her previous life, Qin Yuru married Di Yan. In this life, she had to let Qin Yuru marry into Duke Yong's mansion. In her previous life, Duke Yong's mansion contributed a lot to her tragedy. It could be said that without the help of Duke Yong's mansion, Madame D could not have killed Shui Rulan and her grandmother. There was a price to pay for helping the wicked. Taking a step back, Qin Wanru also knelt down. She knelt down in front of Qin Huayong and kowtowed a few times. "Thank you, father, for raising me for so many years." Qin Huayong didn't know what to say. The former heir of Duke Xing's mansion actually died to save him, but he didn't tell the truth when he talked about it just now. He knew that Mrs. Qin was looking at him with eyes full of disappointment, but he still bit his tongue and didn't say it out loud. Now, he got the favor of raising Qin Wanru. "Wanru, although you are not my biological daughter, you are better than my biological daughter. For so many years, I have been raising you as my biological daughter. Now you have found your biological parents." Qin Huayong couldn't go on for a while. It was very sad that the daughter he had raised for so many years was going to be someone else's. But he was a man, so he quickly adjusted his mood. He reached out to pull Qin Wanru up and said with a gentle look in his eyes, "You have finally found your biological parents. I am also very happy for you." He didn't explain for Qin Yuru during the whole process, nor did he look at Qin Yuru who was crying. "Big sister, get up." Qin Wanru reached out to help Qin Yuru up and looked at Qin Yuru coldly. "You and Madame D set me up again and again just for my identity. For the sake of my father, I will not pursue this matter anymore. But from now on, we are no longer friends and have nothing to do with each other." Qin Wanru's voice was not loud but powerful. The flower hall suddenly became quiet. Everyone looked at Qin Wanru with different eyes, but no one thought that Qin Wanru had gone too far. Madame D and her daughter set her up again and again. Now she could let go of Qin Yuru because Qin's mansion had raised her for so many years. She had done her utmost to Qin's mansion. After what happened today, Qin's mansion could not force Qin Wanru to do anything in the future. It was not the first time that Madame D and her daughter set Qin Wanru up. "Zhuozhua, come here." Rui and Great Elder Princess recovered first and gently waved to Qin Wanru. Qin Wanru walked to Great Elder Princess and was hugged by Rui and Great Elder Princess. The eyes of the Great Elder Princess immediately turned red. "My poor child, if I had known you, I would have found you and brought you back. Your mother was a little silly when she came back. She called your father's name and then Zhuozhua. We didn't know that your nickname was Zhuozhua at that time. Otherwise, we would not have made such a mistake." Thinking of the miserable situation of her daughter's family, Rui and Great Elder Princess couldn't help crying. She only had one daughter in her life, and she loved her like a treasure. Unexpectedly, her daughter died at a young age, and her grandson was raised by Duke Xing's mansion and was not very close to her. If it were not for Qin Wanru's help, she would still be living alone in Great Elder Princess's mansion. Thinking of this, she became more and more sad. Seeing Rui and Great Elder Princess crying, Qin Wanru also felt sad. She couldn't control the feelings that she had been suppressing and tears fell down. In 2 lives, she finally found her family. In her last life, she had been so miserable. Qin Yuru had pretended to be her and ruined her reputation. Madame D had tried her best to push her into the deepest mire. Madame of Duke Xing's mansion and her daughter had tried to kill her. She didn't even know her origin until her death and was cut in half at the waist. There seemed to be a flash of blood in front of her. Her head was more and more like splitting. In the sound of screaming in her ears, blood covered the sky, "Zhuozhua, Zhuozhua." Someone was screaming in her ears, but it seemed to be too far away. Then there was the overwhelming darkness, just like in the last life when she was twisted under the high Dan K. Rui and Great Elder Princess held Qin Wanru who fainted and called her nickname loudly. "Ask the mansion doctor to come here." Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion ordered Madame of Duke Xing with a sullen face. Madame of Duke Xing didn't dare to neglect and hurriedly sent someone to ask the mansion doctor. Then she vacated a room on the side for Qin Wanru to rest. The mansion doctor came quickly. After treating Qin Wanru, he said that she was too sad and weak, which made Rui and Great Elder Princess feel relieved. What happened later had nothing to do with Duke Yong's mansion. Old Madame of Duke Yong's mansion left first, followed by people of Qin's mansion. It was certain that Qin Wanru would return to the family, but people of Qin's mansion couldn't care about the specific operation. Although Madame Dowager was full of worry, she could only let go at this time. After saying goodbye to people of Qin's mansion, old Madame Qin got on her own carriage, followed by Qin Yuru. Qin Huayong rode the horse and returned to Qin's mansion. After getting off the carriage, old Madame Qin stood in front of the carriage and watched Qin Huayong get off the horse. "Come with me," old Madame Qin said with a cold face. "Mother, you go back to have a rest. I will come right away." Qin Huayong knew what Madame Dowager wanted to say and nodded. Knowing that he still had to deal with Qin Yuru, Madame Dowager nodded and led people to Xining Pavilion. Qin Huayong glanced at Qin Yuru with a cold face and turned to the study. Qin Yuru timidly followed him. When they arrived in the study, Qin Huayong waved his hand and everyone left. Qin Huayong sat on the chair and looked at Qin Yuru, who was full of timidity. His eyes were so sharp that Qin Yuru felt uneasy and lowered her head. After a moment of silence, Qin Huayong grabbed the teacup in his hand and smashed it at Qin Yuru's feet. He said sternly, "Tell me, what is going on?" Qin Yuru was so scared that she took 2 steps back, knelt down and burst into tears. "Father, I really don't know. It is Mother's idea. Mother asked me to do this. She said that as long as I can be recognized by Duke Xing's mansion, what happened in Jiangzhou can be erased and no one dares to gossip about me. I also have confidence in Duke Yang's mansion. Father, Mother said so. I will listen to her." At this time, Qin Yuru did not dare to admit her little thoughts and put all the blame on Madame D. With a clang, Qin Yuru fell to the ground in horror. Looking at the long sword pointing at her in front of her, she was extremely terrified. Father, it is really Mother. I don't know anything. It is really Mother." Qin Yuru crawled 2 steps to the side, crawled over and hugged Qin Huayong's thigh, crying silently. She was afraid. She was really afraid. At this moment, she felt murderous. Her father was so angry that he wanted to kill her. This knowledge almost made her fall to the ground, but she also knew that what she could do now was to beg for mercy. Her father was in a rage, so she could only put all the blame on Madame D. Is it really all Madame D's doing? The sword in Qin Huayong's hand slipped slightly, and the tip of the sword touched the ground. His face was still gloomy. People who knew him well knew that he was still angry at this time. Father, I'm really wrong. I listened to my mother. I won't listen to my mother blindly anymore. Father, please forgive me. I'm your only daughter. Seeing that Qin Huayong was a little soft-hearted, Qin Yuru cried even harder. She raised her head and looked at Qin Huayong with tears falling down. Her voice was extremely sad. Did your mother ask you to do this? Qin Huayong's voice seemed to be suppressing the storm, like the eve of a storm. Yes, Father. If I say any false words, let me be struck by lightning 5 times and die a horrible death. Qin Yuru cried loudly and swore fiercely. After swearing, she cried silently and fell to the ground. She covered her chest with tears, and she was extremely wronged. The sword fell to the ground, and Qin Huayong slowly walked to his desk. You go back first. He said in a hoarse voice. Yes, Father, I go back first. Qin Yuru felt as if she was pardoned. She stood up hurriedly and wiped her tears. She turned around and ran out in a panic. At that moment, she was really worried that her father would kill her. Chapter 433. When Qin Huayong arrived at Xinning Pavilion, old Madame Qin was sitting in the main room waiting for him. When he came in, she waved her hand to let all the servants leave. Nanny Duan walked at the end. Looking at Madame Dowager's face, she sighed in her heart and then closed the door for them slightly. Why didn't you say it? In the room, Madame Dowager asked directly. Her words were incomprehensible, but Qin Huayong still understood. He raised his head bitterly and said, Mother, Yuru is my daughter, my only daughter. Even if she has done something wrong, I can't watch her step into the road to death. She can't bear the crime of impersonation. Qin Huayong knew that Madame Dowager blamed him for not telling the whole truth before. He didn't tell her that the former heir of Duke Xing had saved his life, and he raised Qin Wanru to repay this life-saving kindness. With the life-saving kindness of the former heir of Duke Xing, it was reasonable for Qin Huayong to raise Qin Wanru, and there was no such thing as kindness. Since there was no such thing as kindness, Qin Wanru didn't need to repay the kindness, nor would she use this kindness to offset Qin Yuru's crime. Now Qin Yuru could come back safely, and Duke Xing's mansion and even Rui, a great elder princess, turned a blind eye to it, all for the sake of Qin Wanru's kindness. Qin Wanru's identity was destined that the two mansions would not forget the kindness of raising her. Her words made Madame Dowager silent, and the room became quiet, with a depressing atmosphere. After a long while, Madame Dowager scolded, "She is your daughter, but Rulin is going to give birth now. No matter whether the baby is a boy or a girl, are you going to let your children bear a bad reputation because of Yuru?" In Madame Dowager's view, the reason why Qin Yuru made trouble again and even made things out of control was that Madame D couldn't absolve herself from the blame. But what about Qin Huayong? Wasn't it because of his only daughter that he indulged her again and again? If Qin Huayong had severely punished her after her first offense in Jiangzhou, things would not have come to this. In fact, it was because Qin Huayong spoiled her too much. Speaking of the child in Qin Yuru's belly, Qin Huayong found it hard to answer. He was very disappointed with Qin Yuru now, but he always felt that Qin Yuru was his only child. Even if she had done something wrong, he would try his best to make up for it. How could he punish her sincerely? In the past, the so-called punishment was only skin and not bones. How could Qin Huayong not know this? Knowing helplessness was one thing, but feelings were another. Closing her eyes, she made up her mind and said, "Mother, it won't happen again. I'll let her marry into Duke Yong's mansion as soon as possible. Whatever happens in the future, it's all Madame D's fault." Qin Huayong felt that he really didn't want to care about this daughter anymore. Even if he wouldn't have another daughter in the future, Madame D and this daughter would end up like this. What he could do now was to let her continue to marry Di Yan, and he had to do it quickly. Otherwise, things would change. This was the best ending for her now. Old Madame of Duke Yong is sitting there today. Although she didn't say anything, she heard it clearly. Do you think she will let it go? Madame Dowager didn't think it was a good idea. In such a situation, it was best for Qin Yuru not to marry. Let her worship in front of the Buddha from now on, so that she wouldn't go out and hurt others. Mother, I know what you mean. But does this matter have nothing to do with Duke Yong's mansion? Madame D is their daughter. The reason why Madame D has done so many wrong things is that Duke Yong's mansion pushed her behind the scenes. Now Madame D and Yuru have fallen into this situation, and Duke Yong's mansion is the key. In this case, if Yuru doesn't marry into their mansion, whose mansion should she marry? Qin Huayong's face became cold and stern. Thinking of the past of Madame D and Qin Yuru these days, he was very angry. It could be said that the reason why Madame D and Qin Yuru dared to do this kind of thing again and again was because of the background of Duke Yong's mansion. Madame Dowager had seen Qin Huayong grow up, so she naturally knew what he was thinking. Although she was angry at him for hiding Qin Wanru's matter, now she had nothing to say about his arrangement of Qin Yuru. Countess Yong probably won't admit it. She reminded him. Even if old Madame of Duke Yong would admit it and let Qin Yuru marry into Duke Yong's mansion, Countess Yong wouldn't, and Di Yan didn't look like that either. Old Madame of Duke Yong might not be able to suppress them. Mother, don't worry. They have to admit it even if they don't want to. Qin Huayong already had a plan in mind. He was angry in his heart, but he didn't let it out. How could he not love his own daughter? But now she had fallen into such a situation, and it was all Di Yan's fault. If Countess Yong hadn't kept Di Yan's marriage in suspense, Madame D and Qin Yuru wouldn't have been delusional. Later, they even used marriage to tempt them, so that Qin Yuru abandoned the marriage with Qi Tianyu and plotted against Qin Wanru. All the accidents were caused by this matter. Now Qin Yuru was basically ruined, and Duke Yong's mansion had to admit it even if they didn't want to. Seeing that Qin Huayong was determined, Madame Dowager could only let him be after some persuasion failed. Looking at Qin Huayong's back, Madame Dowager sighed helplessly. She really thought that since Qin Yuru was so paranoid, it was better for her to cleanse her mind in front of the Buddha. It was really not a good thing for her to marry Qin Huayong like this. But Qin Huayong insisted on doing this, and she actually couldn't do anything. She was the official mother, but she was not Qin Wanru's biological mother. Otherwise, she could directly rebuke Qin Huayong for hiding Qin Wanru's identity. What happened in Duke Xing's mansion today, Madame Dowager had been a bystander, an informed bystander, and saw it clearly. Did Qin Huayong really know nothing about Qin Yuru and Madame D from all the previous signs and what he said afterwards? She inexplicably felt a chill in her heart. She had raised this son for so many years, and in the past, she just thought that he didn't care about internal affairs and had always been soft-hearted to Madame D and Qin Yuru. But now she felt that she couldn't understand this son. Madame Dowager, don't be sad. First Miss is the biological daughter of the general, and he can't watch First Miss be condemned. Nanny Duan came in with a cup of hot tea and replaced the tea that Madame Dowager had put on the table. That cup of tea was made by Madame Dowager as soon as she entered the room. After Madame Dowager came in, she just stared at it in a daze, and now the tea had become cold. This is unfair to Zhuozhuo. Madame Dowager sighed and said. Madame Dowager, Second Miss will understand you. Previously in Duke Xing's mansion, Second Miss asked you not to speak, didn't she? I think Second Miss doesn't want you to intervene, and she is afraid that you will alienate the general. Nanny Duan knew Madame Dowager's not, so she persuaded softly. They were not biological mother and son, so it was not convenient to say some words. For example, in the matter of punishing First Miss, General said, biological daughter, and Madame Dowager was speechless. Speaking of which, Madame Dowager and First Miss were not related by blood, so it was easy for her to say it out loud. Madame Dowager's eyes turned slightly red. She had raised her little granddaughter for so many years, but now it seemed that she would never come back. Will Zhuozhuo recover? Madame Dowager asked uneasily. After the incident, both Rui, and Great Elder Princess and Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion excluded her. She had seen the situation at that time, and the attitude of Duke Xing's mansion was not good. If no one in Duke Xing's mansion helped to make an exception for Qin Yuru, could she really pretend to be Qin Yuru so smoothly? Madame Dowager, don't worry. Second Miss is so smart, and she will definitely be fine. Besides, there is still Rui and Great Elder Princess, right? Nanny Duan comforted Madame Dowager. She knew Madame Dowager cared about Second Miss and was afraid that Second Miss would suffer losses in Duke Xing's mansion. Nanny Duan had the same idea as Madame Dowager, and she also felt that people in Duke Xing's mansion were not very kind. But after all, Second Miss was from her father's family, so it was certain that she would go back to Duke Xing's mansion. Duke Xing's mansion is not a good place to go. It would be better if she could go to Rui and Great Elder Princess mansion. Madame Dowager sighed heavily. Not to mention Madame of Duke Xing, it seems that old Madame of Duke Xing also hates Zhuozhuo very much. How can Zhuozhuo live in the future? She is still young, and she will definitely be restrained by the whole Duke Xing's mansion. Speaking of this, Madame Dowager burst into tears. Duke Xing's mansion seemed to be beautiful on the surface, but in fact, all the people in it treated Qin Wanru badly, and they not only treated her badly, but also hated her very much. Before, old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion also said that she hated Qin Wanru very much, and she said it several times. The more Madame Dowager thought about it, the more she felt distressed. An aristocratic miss lived in the inner courtyard. If both Madame of Duke Xing and old Madame of Duke Xing, who were in charge of the inner courtyard, treated her badly, how could she live in the future? She had no parents, and was hated by Madame of Duke Xing and old Madame of Duke Xing. She would live a more difficult life than in her own mansion. Thinking of this, how could Madame Dowager not be sad? If she had known this, it would be better not to let Duke Xing's mansion recognize her. Seeing that Madame Dowager was so sad, Nanny Duan persuaded her for a long time, and finally stopped Madame Dowager. Things had come to this point, and it was not something that they could save. Now they could only take one step at a time. Madame Dowager was worried about Qin Wanru, so she asked Nanny Duan to inquire about the news outside. Madame Dowager was worried that Qin Wanru would be wronged, so she sent someone to investigate the follow-up of this matter. Now there were not many people who knew about this matter, but it was absolutely not simple to dig up the old things, and it might even shock the whole capital city. Madame Dowager was afraid that there would be bad news, so she asked someone to inquire about it, so that she could be prepared in advance. After Qin Huayong came back from Madame Dowager's place, he sat in the study and thought for a while. After that, he also sent someone to invite Duke Yong and the heir of Duke Yong to visit, saying that they wanted to discuss Qin Yuru and Di Yen. Chapter 434. In the imperial study, Prince Cheng and Prince Zhou were kneeling down. Chu Luqian was sitting in the wheelchair with his head tilted. There were cup fragments on the ground and the little eunuchs in the room did not dare to make a sound. It was the emperor who was sitting behind the imperial desk, but he was so angry that his face turned pale. "You really don't want to get married?" the emperor asked angrily again. When Prince Qing came in, the first thing he said was that he didn't want to get married. He said that women were too restless and it was better for his backyard to be quiet. Moreover, he believed in Buddhism and didn't want to get married and have children. If the emperor worried that he would have no one to rely on when he was old, he could become a monk and shave now. Although Prince Cheng had repeatedly said that he wanted to become a monk, he only expressed it to the Empress Dowager in a tactful way. He had never directly come to the imperial study to ask for the imperial edict. The emperor did not care about the selection of concubines for Prince Cheng. After all, it was just a small matter. As long as Prince Cheng could be satisfied with one, it would be fine. This matter was handled by the Empress Dowager and the Empress. Because he did not pay attention to it, he did not pay much attention to what happened in Prince Cheng's mansion yesterday. He only heard from the Empress that a woman seduced Prince Cheng on the spot. At that time, he thought it was a romantic joke. He also said that although Prince Cheng was old, he was still very popular with girls. He did not expect that such a thing would happen so early in the morning. "Imperial brother, I really don't want to get married. If all women are like this, I would like to resign and become a monk." Prince Cheng knelt in front of the emperor to ask for the imperial edict today. At this time, he heard the emperor's question and said resolutely, "Didn't you agree before?" The emperor said angrily. His brother wanted to become a monk. How would others think of him? Would he leave a heavy mark in history? Because of his brother, the emperor had a knot in his heart and he didn't want his brother to add another disgrace to him. Become a monk? Others would not think that Prince Cheng was willing to become a monk. They would only think that he was forced by his elder brother. He had not appointed the crown prince of the Eastern Palace yet. In addition, he took over the throne from his elder brother. The emperor knew about all kinds of rumors among the people. If something happened to Prince Cheng, it would be very unpleasant to hear. "Imperial brother, I'm really afraid of that woman. That woman is actually so despicable." Prince Cheng said politely but didn't know what to say. Chu Luqian was a little tired of using one hand as a pillow, so he turned his head and rested it on the other hand. His light peach-colored clothes made him look as handsome as jade, but it also made his skin look paler. He was just here to watch the show. Prince Cheng invited Chu Liuzhou over, but he didn't. However, he happened to come here in advance, so he met Chu Liuzhou. "Since we've met, then let's stay." He tilted his head and closed his eyes slightly. He looked more and more powerless, and more harmless. The emperor was so annoyed by Prince Cheng's attitude that he laughed. "Despicable? What's the difference between this and a young man admiring AI? How is it cheap?" In the emperor's view, it was really not a big deal. It was just that a woman admired the man she liked and wanted to see him secretly. If she could win his favor in private, then she could enter Prince Cheng's mansion. There were many women in the emperor's palace, and more of them used various means to attract his attention. The emperor thought that this kind of thing was not a big deal. If he was willing to pay attention to them, he could do so. If not, he could ignore them. Why did he have to be so afraid of women and turn pale at the mention of them? "Imperial brother, That woman is engaged and she is already engaged. She is engaged, but she still comes to seduce my brother. How can such behavior be the same as that of a young boy who admires her? Prince Cheng also looked anxious and argued loudly. Already engaged? The emperor's face darkened. Yes, already engaged. If I don't know it and really fall in love with her, I will steal someone else's wife in the future. At that time, it will make a bigger scandal. If you don't believe me, you can ask Prince Shou. He was also there at that time. I invited him here today to let him be a witness. Prince Cheng said angrily. An engaged woman was equivalent to being someone else's wife. Such a woman still seduced others, so she really deserved to be called cheap. Chu Liuchen's long eyelashes fluttered twice, but his face was still as calm as water, looking sick and weak. It was normal for him to look like this in the imperial study, and it was not eye-catching. Everyone knew that Prince Chen was not in good spirits. It was good enough for him to hold on for a while. If he held on for a while longer, he might be tired. It was the best for him to close his eyes and rest. The emperor turned his eyes to Chu Liuzhou and frowned. Tell me what happened. Father, you really can't blame uncle for this. That woman is really shameless. I had the same idea as you before. I thought that there was a woman who admired uncle, so she came here secretly to attract his attention. If that's the case, I can only say that the woman is bold. I didn't know the woman's identity, so I sent a little eunuch down there. The woman asked the little eunuch to pass an earring to me. Chu Liuzhou didn't hide anything and told him what had happened at that time in detail. It was not easy for Prince Cheng to agree to choose a concubine, so Prince Zhou came to help him. He didn't expect that he would encounter such a thing. There were many women who threw themselves at him, but no one who was engaged had the face to do this kind of thing and even dared to hide an earring to Prince Cheng. Such a woman was indeed worthy of the word lowly. Which mansion does she come from? The emperor's face was as gloomy as water. If his brother was really afraid of all women because of this woman, the emperor even wanted to kill her. The eldest daughter of Ningyuan army general's mansion is engaged to the heir of Duke Yong's mansion. The two families are originally cousins. It is said that this first miss had been engaged when she was in Jiangzhou. But because she wanted to play up to Duke Yong's mansion, she schemed against her second sister and broke off the engagement. After that, she went to the capital city and engaged to the heir of Duke Yong's mansion. Hearing the emperor's question, Prince Cheng hurriedly told him in detail. Yesterday, he sent someone to carefully investigate Qin Yuru and found that she was full of misdeeds. Prince Cheng, who had been mentally prepared, was also shocked. At that moment, he really felt that women were so terrible that they could be so terrible and cheap. For the first time, he felt that his previous idea was correct. Women were the root of his troubles. It was better not to marry one if he could avoid it. Although there was an element of acting in this, it was also his true thoughts. Is Qin Huayong a very upright person? Why did he give birth to such a daughter? The emperor was very satisfied with Qin Huayong. But now when he heard that Qin Huayong had such a daughter, he frowned more tightly. He had seen many women in the imperial harem, but he had never heard of such a daughter. Ningyuan army general only has one biological daughter. The second miss was picked up in the war. Chu Luchen said lazily without opening his eyes. It explained why Qin Huayong spoiled this daughter so much. Second Miss Qin is not biological. Prince Cheng was stunned and said with a surprised face. He had investigated Qin Yuru before, so he naturally knew Qin Wanru. At that time, his counselor had advised him that if he had to choose, he should choose some young and promising ones who could help him in the future, in addition to the selected ones. Qin Wanru was the most valuable one among them. It was not clear how much potential Qin Huayong had, but it seemed that he had won the emperor's favor. Of course, the premise was that Qin Wanru had won Qin Huayong's favor. But now it seemed that she was not biological. What was the use if she was not biological? Prince Cheng originally felt that it was a pity that he could not choose Qin Wanru. But now he felt comfortable. Fortunately, he did not choose the second miss of Qin's mansion. She was useless. She was just an orphan left in the war. She was lucky to be adopted by Qin Huayong. Qin Huayong had his own daughter, so how could he have feelings for an adopted daughter? This also explained the news that his spy got before. Otherwise, no matter how partial Qin Huayong was, it was impossible for him to watch his elder daughter ruin his younger daughter. But the news had not been confirmed. Was it confirmed now? Even though Prince Cheng had been prepared, he had to show a surprised face at this time. As for how Chu Luchen knew this, no one in the imperial study doubted it. Others didn't know what happened in Jiangzhou, but how could he not know? He should know it when he temporarily lived in Ning Yuan army general's mansion in Jiangzhou, and that was the time when Qin Yuru broke off the engagement. Third brother, did the first miss of Qin's mansion really hurt her younger sister and then ruined her reputation by herself? Prince Zhou turned to look at Chu Luchen and asked. He was in Jiangzhou at that time, so he should be the clearest about it. In the past, it was inconvenient for him to ask more. But now it was mentioned, so he naturally asked. Chu Luchen nodded and waved his hand gently. Xiao Xuanzi understood and stood out from behind Chu Luchen. He told Chu Luchen everything he saw and heard in Jiangzhou at that time. From smashing the bridal sedan chair to finding out that Qin Yuru had secretly exchanged letters with Di Yan, after the two mansions broke off the engagement, Qin Yuru hurt Qin Wanru again and again, and Madame Di tried to kidnap Qin Wanru. There were many things. After he finished telling them, everyone in the imperial study quieted down. Prince Cheng had known it for a long time, but he didn't know it in such detail. After Xiao Xuanzi finished, Prince Cheng thought calmly for a while and suddenly kowtowed with sweat all over his head. He said, "Brother, please order me to become a monk. I really can't stand this kind of torment. If so, it's too early to become a monk. That way, I won't ruin my reputation." Chu Liuzhou also felt cold all over and was stunned. There were many women in his mansion, and there were many scenes of jealousy in the past. But in the past, he only regarded it as a pleasure. He didn't expect that it was so vicious. He only felt a cold sweat on his back and suddenly remembered that there were all kinds of accidents of women in his mansion. Could it be that it was just a superficial matter? There were many such things. Chu Liuzhou was so shocked that his face turned pale. Although he was only 15 years old, he had learned how to behave at the age of 14. There were many beautiful palace maids given by the Empress and he found many by himself. But he didn't expect that there were so many details. Chapter 435. Get up. Looking at Prince Cheng, who was so scared that he kept kowtowing, and then looking at his second son whose face was pale, the emperor sighed and looked gentle. Immediately, eunuchs went over to help Prince Cheng and Prince Zhou up. The emperor gave them a seat and they sat down together. Qin Huayong's eldest daughter's behavior is really shameless, but not all women in the world are like this. Such a woman is definitely a minority. You can't be unwilling to marry and have children because of such a woman. The emperor comforted Prince Cheng, who was in a panic. The emperor said so again and again. Even if Prince Cheng was full of reluctance, he had to take it easy at this time. "Brother, at least I don't want to get married now." He had seen the choices given by the Empress, and almost none of them was good. "Well, then wait for a while, but you don't have to make a fuss about becoming a monk." The emperor decided to give in first. At least for the time being, he would not become a monk. "I'll listen to your arrangement." Prince Cheng stopped making a fuss and nodded immediately. The emperor looked at Chu Liuzhou and Chu Luchen and said, "You two are not young anymore. After a period of time, let your imperial grandmother help you choose first." "Uncle, I'm not in a hurry. I'm weak and need to rest for a few more years." Chu Luchen slowly opened his eyes, stretched out his hand to cover his chest and coughed. Seeing that he was so sick and weak and even tired to talk, the emperor was silent for a while and finally nodded. He said softly, you don't have to get married in a hurry, but you can choose first. Tell your imperial grandmother what kind of person you want to choose. Thank you, uncle. I understand. Chu Luchen coughed again and said gently. With a smile in his starry eyes, it could be seen that he was in a peaceful mood. The emperor sighed deeply in his heart and clenched his hands hard under his sleeves. Then he turned to look at Chu Liuzhou and said, ask your mother to pay more attention to your marriage. Father, in fact, I'm not in a hurry. I'm still young and insensible. Chu Liuzhou hurriedly refused. After hearing the words just now, how could he still have the mood to choose a concubine at this time? He also reminded himself again and again that choosing a concubine was a big matter, and he had to inquire about it clearly first. Otherwise, if he chose someone like the young miss of Qin's mansion, his reputation would be ruined at that time. Zhou Wang felt that he could still consider more. Previously, he had only considered the woman's background and net worth. Now, he felt that character was very important, and he could not be careless. Knowing that his two sons were scared, the emperor felt that this matter couldn't be rushed. Originally, he and the Empress Dowager intended to arrange the marriage for these sons today. Then, after a year's wedding ceremony, it would take some time before they officially got married. But at this time, the emperor felt that it was better to choose later. At least, he had to let his son see clearly that he couldn't act rashly when choosing a daughter-in-law. Especially the daughter-in-law of the imperial family. She might even be a motherly model to the world and be a role model to the world. The oldest of his sons was only 15 years old. It was good to wait for a few more years for their minds to mature. Thinking of this, he didn't want to choose a concubine for them anymore. In fact, the royal family really didn't have to get married so early, and they still needed to be careful. The emperor only thought that his sons and younger brothers were frightened, but he didn't expect that he was also shocked by this matter imperceptibly and replanned the marriage of his sons. A eunuch hurriedly came in and said, Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager asks you to go over. What's the matter? The emperor said unhappily. Rui, a great elder princess, entered the palace to look for the Empress Dowager. It seems that the daughter of Infanta Qinghua and the former heir of Duke Xing has been found. The eunuch reported. Chu Liuchen's long eyelashes fluttered, and he still closed his eyes to rest. If it wasn't necessary, he would always be in such a state in the imperial study. Qinghua and Xiao Zhang's daughter. The emperor was shocked. Yes, but I don't know the details. The eunuch said cautiously and didn't dare to make any mistakes. When doing things in the palace, one had to be careful. If one were to exaggerate, it might bring about a fatal disaster. Let's go and have a look. After the shock, the emperor was happy. Xiao Jiang was a good friend of him when he was young. Hearing that Xiao Jiang had a daughter, the emperor became interested and stood up. Imperial brother, I'll leave the palace first. Prince Qing stood up and said. I'll also leave the palace. Prince Zhou also stood up and saluted. This matter sounded strange, and they thought it was better to go back first. You go back first. Chen, follow me to see your imperial grandmother. The emperor said happily. Uncle, you go first. I'll come later. Chu Luchen opened his eyes and said in a low voice. Okay, then you can come slowly. The emperor agreed and strode out with his servants. Prince Cheng and Prince Zhou followed him and left. Xiao Xuanzi took the fox fur coat from another eunuch behind him and put it on Chu Luchen. Then he skillfully pushed Chu Luchen out. When they reached the threshold, the two eunuchs on the side immediately helped to lift the wheelchair and put it outside gently. Xiao Xuanzi nodded to the two eunuchs with a smile and pushed Chu Luchen out. In such a short time, the emperor, Prince Cheng, and Prince Zhou in front of him had already left. Master, do you want to take the carriage? Xiao Xuanzi asked while pushing the wheelchair out. No, just push it slowly like this. Chu Luchen said lazily and looked at the sky with a pair of handsome eyes. It was a big sun today and the wind was not strong. It was very comfortable to push the wheelchair like this. He wrapped the fox fur coat around his body and leaned against the wheelchair, looking more and more lazy. His face was as white as jade. Even under the effect of the white fox fur coat, it was still as white as jade. Then this servant will push you over slowly. Xiao Xuanzi understood and deliberately emphasized the word slowly. He stretched out his hand and waved to the back. Several eunuchs behind him stepped back and followed them at a distance of about 10 steps. Master, is it about the second Mrs. matter? Xiao Xuanzi looked behind him and was very satisfied with the distance between the eunuchs. Then he lowered his voice while pushing the wheelchair. Chu Luqian closed his handsome eyes again and made a lazy sound. After that, he didn't say anything for a long time. Just when Xiao Xuanzi thought he had fallen asleep, he heard him say lightly, Zhuozhuo is the daughter of the former heir of Duke Xing. It's the best time to find out the matter now. Why? Xiao Xuanzi blinked and said in confusion, the second miss is still young. If she really goes back to Duke Xing's mansion, she will be controlled by the people of Duke Xing's mansion. I heard that the old madam of Duke Xing's mansion likes the first miss of Qin's mansion and doesn't like the second Mississippi. It seems that she will not care about the second miss in the future. If the old madam didn't care about the biological grandmother, how could she expect her aunt's madam of Duke Xing to care about the second miss? But judging from how Madame of Duke Xing raised Xiao Yuanhao, it was obvious that she wanted to beat him to death. It could be seen that this Madame of Duke Xing was also a schemer. That lass won't be so easily controlled by others. Chu Liuqian's lips curved and his smile became more gentle. Even if he didn't open his eyes, Xiao Xuanzi knew that his master's smile was the most sincere at this time, and there must be a smile in his eyes. With an idea in mind, he carefully looked at Chu Liuqian's face and boldly said, Master, do you care about the second miss very much? If it was in the past, Xiao Xuanzi would not dare to say it and would only guess in his heart. But now the atmosphere was good. Xiao Xuanzi felt that even if he said something he shouldn't say, he would not be punished. This prince's flowers and cat are all in her hands. If something happens to this little girl, this prince's flowers and cat will be destroyed by her hands. Chu Luqian said indifferently. Xiao Xuanzi secretly curled his lips. For the first time, he felt that his master was stubborn. Were the flowers and the cat so important? Not to mention the flowers. Although they were precious, he knew his master's temperament very well. He was a ruthless master. Not to mention flowers, he didn't even care about people. As for the cat, although it was well raised, it was not raised by him. When he was happy, he hugged it and threw it away directly when he was unhappy. He didn't care about it at all. He just coaxed others to think that he cared about the cat. He said it as if it was true. If he didn't care about it, how could he enter the palace so early? Xiao Xuanzi saw clearly what Chu Luqian said just now. Not only Prince Cheng and Prince Zhou were scared, but also the emperor's face was not good. Chu Luqian deliberately entered the palace to scare people. Master, didn't you say that you want the second miss to enter the mansion? Xiao Xuanzi didn't dare to say what was in his heart, so he immediately said with a flattering smile. This prince's residence lacks a mistress. This lass is quite suitable, at least she's pleasing to this prince's eyes. Chu Luqian said slowly, I can't let others take advantage of the girl I like. No matter how good Ning Yuan army general's mansion is, it is not her family, and they don't care about her. These words were said slowly and indifferently, and it even seemed that he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. But Xiao Xuanzi could feel the strong displeasure in his words, and the smile on his face immediately spread. He knew that the second Miss Qin was different. Oh, no, he had to call her second Miss Xiao in the future. No. The ranking of Duke Xing's mansion might be lower. It was said that there were 4 misses in Duke Xing's mansion, so it would be the 5th. How's the arrangement yesterday? Hearing this, Xiao Xuanzi became serious and said, Master, don't worry. Everything is going according to your arrangement. Oh. After saying this, Chu Luchen leaned against the bed and closed his eyes quietly. At this time, imperial grandmother should be quarreling. He didn't have the patience to go there now. If he went there later, the quarrel could come to a conclusion. It seemed that he had to think about the next thing. Prince Ching took this opportunity to get away, and his marriage was not urgent for the time being. Chu Luchen was a little hesitant about whether to make an engagement with Qin Wanru or not. Previously, he was afraid that imperial grandmother would urge him, but now he was not so anxious. Could he take it slow? After all, it was still young. But if he took it slow, it would be inconvenient for him to help her. Rolling his beautiful eyes, Chu Luchen thought it was better to make an engagement. Make an engagement first. This girl seemed to have her own ideas. When this girl stretched out her sharp claws, he would give her a push. Chapter 436. You want to raise your granddaughter by yourself? Empress Dowager looked at Ruyan Great Elder Princess in surprise. She had always been raised by her father's family. When there were people in her father's family, how could she turn to her maternal family? This was actually unreasonable. Although Empress Dowager had always taken pity on Ruyan Great Elder Princess, she couldn't help but show a cold face at this time. Duke Xing's mansion was a noble family, and the noble family was the foundation of the country. Empress Dowager, my granddaughter is not liked by old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. At that time, she repeatedly said that she hated Zhuozhua in front of everyone. Empress Dowager, if she, as a grandmother, doesn't protect Zhuozhua, how can she live in Duke Xing's mansion as a girl? Ruyan Great Elder Princess's eyes turned red. She really thought so. She was such a young and lovely girl. If she lost the love of her elders and suddenly returned to Duke Xing's mansion, she would not be familiar with the people and the place. How could she survive? Empress Dowager, I didn't know that she was my biological granddaughter at that time, so I said that. I was also deceived and didn't know that I recognized the wrong person. Now I have recognized my biological granddaughter, how can I not love her? Empress Dowager, please help me. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion felt her heart thumped and she also wiped away her tears. At this time, she also regretted why she was driven to that extent by Ruyan Great Elder Princess's words at that time. Although she really didn't like Qin Wanru, she didn't dare to show it at this time and was eager to save her. If Ruyan Great Elder Princess really raised Zhuozhua, all the people in Duke Xing's mansion would be ashamed to see others. Empress Dowager, my son was tortured by them. Now it's my granddaughter's turn. She is so young. If she stays in Duke Xing's mansion, I'm afraid that she will either be forced to leave or lose her life. I pity her parents for their early death. Poor her parents died early, and her adoptive father has a vicious adoptive mother. Now she is like this again. I really can't bear it. Ruyan Great Elder Princess shed tears. She had always been strict and always smiled in front of the Empress Dowager. Even though everyone knew that she was lonely, she still straightened her back, but this time, she couldn't hold back her tears. Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion trembled with anger. Rui and Great Elder Princess directly accused their mansion of murdering Qin Wanru. She said, Empress Dowager, what happened at that time was not the matter of our mansion. My son was a good heir, but he ended up like that. Even his biological daughter was lost outside. Is this what we want to see? If you hadn't made things difficult for my daughter and only sided with the second branch of your manor, how could the crown prince have taken my son away? When they left, they didn't tell us. After that, we also sent many people to look for them. As for the partiality, if they were really partial, the position of the heir would have been given to the second prince. Old Madam was also dissatisfied. Now the position of Duke Xing has fallen into your hands, hasn't it? Old Madam, you have been thinking about harming my daughter and son-in-law for the sake of the position of Duke Xing, haven't you? Rui and Great Elder Princess also wiped her tears and said angrily. In front of the Empress Dowager, she didn't show any mercy to Old Madam. Old Madam didn't expect that Rui and Great Elder Princess would say such a thing. She was so angry that her face turned pale. She pointed at Great Elder Princess with trembling fingers and almost couldn't say a word. Although there had been estrangement between the two families in the past, they had never fallen out with each other like this. Moreover, Rui and Great Elder Princess meant that if Old Madam admitted it, the entire Duke Xing's mansion could not bear the responsibility. Great Elder Princess, don't you know the heavens have a long way to go to slander me? You will get what you deserve. Old Madam was so angry that her liver hurt. I heard that Old Madam doesn't like my daughter and always makes things difficult for my daughter. Also, because my second daughter-in-law couldn't marry my son-in-law, you disliked my daughter everywhere. Later, my daughter and son-in-law were forced to go to other places. Now the one who benefits the most is the second branch of your mansion. My daughter and son-in-law have been ruined, and now they only have a pair of orphans and an orphan girl. You still don't let them go. Rui and Great Elder Princess glared at Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion angrily. Today, no matter what, I will take my granddaughter back to the princess's mansion. Nonsense. How is still in your mansion, and now you want to take Wanru away. At that time, Infanta Qinghua married into my family, not to marry into our family. How could you do this? How could you make our Duke Xing's mansion feel ashamed? If you really want to take Wanru back, return how, Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion also refused to give in. The Empress Dowager touched her head with a headache and leaned back helplessly. The conflict between the two had been going on for a long time. At this time, no matter who they met, they refused to give in. It was useless to persuade them again. Your Majesty. The sharp voice of the eunuch came from outside. The Empress Dowager breathed a sigh of relief. The Emperor finally came. The dispute between Rui and Great Elder Princess and Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion seemed to be a dispute in the inner court, but in fact, the content involved between them had already gone beyond the inner court. There were some things that the Empress Dowager didn't doubt, especially the words that Rui and Great Elder Princess said just now. In the past, she didn't care about it, so she didn't think so. At this time, after listening carefully, she really felt that it was possible. It sounded that the second branch of Duke Xing's mansion really took all the advantages, and Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion seemed to be really partial. It really had nothing to do with the second branch of Duke Xing's mansion. After all, the title of nobility fell to the second branch. Before, the Emperor also mentioned that Duke Xing's mansion requested to confer the title of heir of Duke Xing, and the present first young master of Duke Xing was invited. It had nothing to do with Xiao Yuanhao, the son of the former heir of Duke Xing. If she hadn't mentioned that Rui and Great Elder Princess had a grandson, who was young but was the legitimate heir of Duke Xing, the Emperor would really confer the title of heir of Duke Xing. The title of nobility was gone, and now the title of heir of Duke Xing was also going to be gone. It was clear at a glance who would benefit. The Emperor strode in. Rui and Great Elder Princess and Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion hurriedly knelt down to greet the Emperor. Mother. The Emperor said, at ease, bowed to the Empress Dowager, and then sat down in a chair on one side. Rui and Great Elder Princess and Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion were also helped up by the palace servants and sat down in a well-behaved manner. Mother, I heard that Qinghua and Xiao Jiang have their biological daughter wandering outside. What's going on? The Emperor asked as soon as he sat down. Yes, they have a daughter wandering outside at that time, and this daughter is the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion. The Empress Dowager said with a smile. In fact, she couldn't tell whether it was good or bad. If Qin Wanru was really the second miss of Ningyuan Army General's mansion, her identity was not enough to match her grandson. If Qin Huayong could climb up the social ladder, it would be a good marriage. However, if she was the daughter of lineal descent of Duke Xing's mansion and the daughter of Rui and Great Elder Princess, her identity was enough, but she had no support behind her. From the look of Duke Xing's mansion, it could be seen that they didn't attach much importance to this Mississippi. It made sense. She was just a daughter, not a son. If they recognized her, she would have an extra dowry. As the daughter of lineal descent of Duke Xing's mansion, the dowry would be a lot. As for Rui, and great elder princess, she also had a noble identity, but no real power. The Empress Dowager couldn't tell whether it was good or bad now. After this thing was over, she had to ask her grandson and listen to his opinion. That's great. Since you have a daughter, you can take her back. The emperor felt that the second miss of Ningyuan army general's mansion was a little familiar, but it was not the time to think about it. He immediately said with a smile, "Since this is a happy event, why do you quarrel? Your Majesty, please let my granddaughter live in my house. I don't feel at ease raising her in Duke Xing's mansion." Rui, and great elder princess directly asked. "Your Majesty, if so, how can our Duke Xing's mansion stand in the imperial court?" Old Madam was also anxious and said. "Well, you two don't quarrel. I've heard what you said clearly. No one was willing to do what happened at that time, so it's not good to blame anyone. Now it's a great fortune to find her back. There's no need to quarrel like this. I think she can live in Duke Xing's mansion for a period of time. If great elder princess wants, it's okay to let her live there for a period of time." Seeing that they quarreled again, the Empress Dowager had to say something. "Thank you, Empress Dowager." Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion was overjoyed and hurriedly kowtowed to thank her. "Empress Dowager, my granddaughter is delicate and has fainted at this time. I'm really worried about letting her stay in Duke Xing's mansion." Rui, and great elder princess choked with sobs and shed tears. Her voice was very sincere. She stood up with the help of a palace maid beside her and was about to kowtow to the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. The Empress Dowager hurriedly ordered the palace maid to hold her, and her voice involuntarily became a little softer. "Great elder princess, after all, she is the daughter of the Shao enterprise. It's a little inappropriate to let her live directly in your mansion, isn't it? Great elder princess, how has lived in your mansion? If you also take her away, what do you want us to do?" Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion also looked at Rui, and great elder princess, and begged, "Great elder princess, even if you insist on blaming me for what happened at that time, I can't do anything about it. But now, this child is Jiang's biological daughter. If she can't return to her family, Jiang won't be able to rest in peace." Thinking of her son's appearance at that time, Old Madam burst into tears. Her eldest son was originally her pride. Everyone said that her son was capable and Duke Xing's mansion would be carried forward in his hands in the future. Who expected that he would die outside for a daughter and even lose his biological daughter? Seeing that Rui, and great elder princess, and Old Madam cried again, the Empress Dowager sighed heavily and turned to the Emperor. This was also the reason why she specially sent someone to invite the Emperor to come. Although Rui, and great elder princess, was pitiful, it was reasonable for her to send Qin Wanru to live in her mansion for a long time. It was reasonable for her to live occasionally for a period of time. Otherwise, Duke Xing's mansion would be embarrassed. Great elder princess and Old Madam, you don't have to be sad. I still have to find out what happened to Xiao Jiang. If it was really an accident, it would be fine. But if someone secretly killed him, I will definitely not let him off easily. Before I find out, Xiao Zhang's daughter should live in Duke Xing's mansion first, and Duke Xing's mansion should also record her under Xiao Zhang's name. The Emperor thought for a while and said. He still had to ask someone to investigate the death of Xiao Jiang, the heir of Duke Xing's mansion. As for Xiao Zhang's daughter, she should also be recorded in the family tree. Hearing the Emperor's words, Rui, and great elder princess, and Old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion stopped making trouble. At present, these two things were indeed the most important. Xiao Zhang's death was all told by Qin Huayong. The details had to be investigated. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.